Nice crowd here tonight. Is this thing on? No. How about now? Okay. Oh, that really sensitive.
Now I know why it doesn't work at the planning commission. I don't have it on.
Might be. All right, thank you all for attending. We're going to call the meeting to order at official time 7:01. Call the meeting to order at 7:01, and the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started tonight, I just wanted to make a special note and mention the passing of Dawn Capeless, who was very involved with Sylvan Township, and her husband and family for years and years, and was an outstanding member of the Planning Commission as secretary. Prior to that, a library representative, and she passed away last week, so we want to just mention her and honor her for all her work and dedication to the community. She was a epitome of a community member in her giving heart and time for all of us. So I want to say thank you, Dawn, and recognize her today. Okay. The next item is public comment, our first public comment portion of the meeting. Oh, and we have a microphone up here because it's been very difficult to hear people. So if you could stand up, if you would be so kind to come to the microphone and use it, it will help us to make sure our minutes are accurate. If you're really shy of a microphone, maybe you could stand and try to project your voice. We'll let you know if we hear you.
Hi, my name is Christina Snyder. I'm an architect, but I'm also a person who's a longtime fan of communities and community-supported agriculture. And I'm here to speak in favor of the rezoning application for the 20-acre project. I guess it's at the very end of the agenda. And when I was looking for where I wanted to settle long-term, I spent quite a bit of time actually working with another group that was trying to start a community, and that was in Kalamazoo area. And we had on the order of between 20 to 30 people showing up for regular meetings. I guess I should say maybe a dozen to 30 people. It varied a lot, but and that was over the course of several years. And the project really only fell through because of the 2007 housing crash. So I wanted to let the community know that there actually is a fairly large demand for the kind of high density housing in a rural area that makes open space for agriculture as well. And I think the purpose of rezoning to an LDR classification would allow, which would actually normally allow a lot more housing. In this case, the particular piece of property at Ag is like 9 units, and would only be asking for a 33% increase of like 3 additional units. So it doesn't seem excessive to me, but I know it can make a big difference in terms of the affordability for people. And that was the main reason why we could not participate with the communities that were happening in Ann Arbor, was the expense of property there. And also they couldn't get enough property to even be able to do agriculture at all, really. So I think that, you know, this project is not about making a profit for the developer. It's about creating an alternative quality of life for people. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Michael Williams, Sylvan Township, Kavanaugh Lake Township. I see I've been given 3 minutes to speak. I'm going to speak on 3 separate issues. They're rather complex, so I would ask the board's forbearance. I'm not going to go out late. My wife told me thank Hemingway, not Henry James. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I received a call last week from Trustee Kosek, looking for some background information on the properties of taxis and whether or not they could be had to be used for bond repayment and what they could possibly be used for. And I did a little research and saw that in the original developed contracts, which the court voided because the township had committed fraud. The special assessments were indeed tied to bond repayments. That contract being voided, I've not seen other contracts, but my sense would be that no, there is no obligation per se to use taxes for repayment of debt. That said, however, I see an item on the agenda tonight. If I'm, unless I'm mistaken, I would think that that the agenda item is somewhat mislabeled. Move funds from special sewer account to pay down bond. Yeah, you have a payment due on the 1st of May. My understanding is so you're going to have to make that payment. My understanding of you were talking about perhaps paying down other debt. Is that correct on the balance sheet? Yes or no? Don't know.
So I believe, it's not my agenda item. I was hoping whoever's agenda item it would be would speak to that, but I think they were speaking to the advance,
Okay.
the running advance.
That is my sense. And I have this to say about it. As a practitioner in the accounting and finance field in small and medium-sized corporations, my one rule was pay no bill before it's time. In other words, if I got something in that's 1% 10, get that puppy out the door. If I got something in that's net 30, then it can go out on the 29th day unless there were good reason for it to go out easier. If we have a supplier, for example, with renews and financial straits, then yes, get that empty money. So in terms of paying off the county, how do we know it's time? Is it time to pay it off or not? And I say it depends. And what it depends on is the interest rate that you're paying on that debt. And do we know what the interest rate is on that debt to the county?
On the advance.
On the advance,
the
yes.
interest is, I believe, 3.4% right now, 3.43.
Okay.
And it can go up every 5 years. It gets adjusted. Maybe you remember that.
Well, then what you have is a situation where it may not make sense to pay off the bond. Let me give you an example. Let us say I owe $100 and I have to pay a year from now 2% interest, $102. So I have the choice now. I can pay that $100 off and save the $2 interest. On the other hand, if I have the opportunity to put that money in the bank and earn 3% on it, at the end of that year, I have $103. I can then pay the $102 and on $1 to the good. That's called interest rate arbitrage. So you go to a fancy word, but that's all it is. You're investing something else to pay this because you can get a higher rate over here. Right? So I think I've taken a look at the balance sheet. I did come in on Monday and run a general ledger report so I could have some sort of factual basis here. There's some issues on the balance sheet, which I'll get to later. But nevertheless, I would urge the board to think cautiously about this. For example, You can at the moment. I have a rate sheet in my credit union. You can walk down and get a 10-month CD, 10-month CD for 4.27%. So I'll tell you what, you let me buy that debt from you, and I'll take money, and I'll take it down to my credit union, and I'll put it in, and I'll get 4.7%, and then I'll be happy to pay the 3.5% next year. But more than happy. That's interest rate arbitrage, very, very simply. So I'm gonna ask the board to consider whether it is worth paying down that county debt. I understand it's accruing more interest, but if you can park that money elsewhere and get interest, you're ahead of the game. Now, I understand that also calls for a more aggressive management of township funds than we've seen in the past. And I can understand why there has been a sort of, all right, laissez-faire attitude about it, because we've been, for the most part, in the last few years, a very low interest rate environment. We're no longer in that environment. We're in an environment now where we have bonds at 2.65%, and we can go out and stash money and get 3.5%, 4%, 4.25%. It depends on how much on where you put the money. So should you pay them off? I'm not sure. I'm unsure of that. It will cost you money in the long run if you do, as I suggested, just start to arbitrage your interest rates. In other words, I looked at the general ledger report, as I say, I pulled it, and I saw a CD in there for some $50,000 that it got all of like 5%, $500 in interest in you. Well, yeah, that's what you were getting on a CD 7 years, but that's it. But what you do in that case is you walk into your banker and say, excuse me, I'd like to bust that CD. I'm willing to pay 6 months penalty interest, 1%, and now give me the 4%. You will make that money back very quickly. So that's the first item. You know, I understand it's the treasurer's responsibility to monitor and administer these funds. But I also think that given the sums we're dealing with, and when I get to the balance sheet, you'll see the sums we're dealing with. I think the entire board has a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of the township to see that the money in these times is being managed properly. I understand this is the treasurer's role. I think it's the whole board's role to make sure that that's being done in the best interest of the township. Item number 2. More to the point that trustee Kosek's called to me. Was there a legal obligation for tax issues? That, as I said, no in the original contracts, yes, but not no. But we have to understand that all funds in the township, unless explicitly stated otherwise, are fungible, which means that $1 doesn't matter where it comes from, it's just the same as another dollar. I reach in this pocket or reach in this pocket. Now, the township was in a situation back at the start of things when it couldn't do this. It had construction money and it had bond money. And this is why we're in this situation now, because we had a very low user base and they wanted to use construction funding, the bond money, for operational costs, which is not allowed. Not allowed. But nevertheless, they did it because to do otherwise would create a financial crisis and a large embarrassment to the board. And I finally pulled it out of my drawer and read the original complaint of the Hamill case. And if I had read it at the time, believe me, there is no way I would have burned the town hall down before I let that case go to court. It was obvious from the complaint that the township would be found guilty. The township committed fraud. The township told the developers that the plant was operational, either verbally or by its actions, because the township was not allowed to collect fees until the sewer system and the water plant were operational, respectively. But they collected those fees. A judge is going to say, I'm sorry, that's fraud. What does it take for fraud? Oh God, how many nights have I spent with this? If a fraud is an intentional misstatement of a material fact upon which someone relies And as a result, it incurs damages. In other words, you lying buggers, you lied to us and it cost us money, and now you're gonna have to pay. Which means that we all ended up paying. Nevertheless, long story, I digress. All funds are now fungible. Doesn't matter this pocket, that pocket, doesn't matter. However, I do maintain that there is a hierarchy in those funds. When you read the original document, you will see that it is clearly intent to pay back the indebtedness through the use of tap fees and special assessments. That is clearly the intent. The taxpayer was there only as a backstop if for some reason those monies failed to arrive. Well, indeed, they failed to arrive because the township committed fraudulent actions. So we all stepped into the breach and we all started digging into our pocket. Every tax bill, every minute tax bill, 4.4 mils, and off it went. But in the interim years, things have happened. We had a malpractice judgment against Foster Swift, in which we received $2.some million. Now, not in my estimation, I don't like Bill Fahey's head on that wall, but I don't think I could get that. So we got that. I understand we've recently got $1 million in tap fees from the manufactured home community. All of those things go in. And now I'm going to use a metaphor. I don't know how old many of you are. I might be one of the oldest of Dave, maybe you're my age. But back in I remember times my grandfather's farm, where we take the milk from the barn and we bring it down the basement where we had what's called a separator. And you turn the crank, right? You turn the crank, and what happens? The cream rises to the top. Milk stays at the bottom. Well, that's what I suggest should happen. Think of the taxpayers' money as the cream money. It is the last resort in repaying the bonds. It's not the first thing we do, it was the last resort. And if we have other money, then that should go toward the repayment of bonds. And so now we're getting to the point of, well, if we've got other money and repaying the bonds, how long do we, this is the question on everybody's mind, right? How long do we have to pay this 4 point? How long, oh Lord, will we be crucified on this cross of debt, shall we say? Well, in my look at the general ledger, and I will give some figures, I cannot swear by their accuracy. All I have is the general ledger output. There's some real mysteries on it. I've run many balance sheets, and there are some mysteries on it. For example, I see an item in the assets section of $3.9 million interest receivable to the township. Well, that's what I said. You know, who owes the township $3.9 million in interest? The account hasn't moved since last year. It's the same account, same balance, March 31st, 2022, March 31st, 2023, same balance. So that's the sort of thing that I don't know. But what I did basically is add up all of our cash balances, add up everything I could see related to the debt, and that was various line items, contract, county contract, this, contract, man, etc. And these are my preliminary figures. As I swear, I won't swear on the stack of Bibles to them, but I'm a pretty good accountant. I do have to do a humble brag. So I added up exclusive and interest payments. We're not talking about interest because I think we can arbitrage that amount. Exclusive interest we owe, according to the general ledger I saw, $4.9 million. We have on hand in township funds at least $5.9 million. So you can see if we didn't care about what sort of reserves we had, we could pay off all the debt. Now we've got enough money to move, $1 million left over. We may indeed have more than that, because as far as I can ascertain, although the $1 million made it to the bank, the job, get the money, and that's the cardinal rule. Back when I ran a retail shop, the last thing you do is you get the money in the bank. You will the bar first. No, you get the money in the bank. Right? So you get the money in the bank, good. But that doesn't mean that it's entered the accounting system. So did the report I see Monday include that? My suspicion is no. My suspicion is no. Why do I say that? Because if I get $1 million, I have to book an offsetting Somebody's nodding back there, they understand, I have to put another $1 million someplace on the income statement or balance sheet. Well, I looked at tap fees, that's where you think it would be. $4,000 for a year, so it obviously didn't go there. And there's no other account that shows revenue of that amount. So my guess is, and this is not a big crime, you enter it as of the date. If Rod got it to the bank on March 28th, then you stick out of the system and you make an entry dated March 28th and things are fine. And the next statement will show up with the proper amount. But I could not see where this was done. The only way that money got on the balance sheet would be if it were debited to cash and put directly to some fund equity account, which is just such a huge no-no. Somebody else back there knows accounting and is agreeing with it. As a matter of fact, in some software packages I dealt with, you cannot post directly to retained earnings or fund. They won't let you because it's the result of everything that happens on an income statement, and we're going to carry that forward to the retained earnings. Same way in the township, everything that happens here gets forwarded to the fund balance. So you don't create entries directly to the fund balance. So I think, actually, if I'm correct, we might have $7 million and $4.9 million in debt. So the question becomes, what is a reasonable reserve? The township needs an operating balance in its account. You're not going to put the fund balance down. What's a reasonable amount to keep on hand for the operating capital of the township? And the second question is, what other needs do we have in the water system, for example, for maintenance, and what are those going to be? And therefore, how much money do we need? And I would suggest that if we have $7 million on hand, which I think we do, and $4.9 million in debt, we already have a $2 million pad. How much is enough? That's a political question that the board will have to struggle with. But I can tell you what the taxpayers of the township think without doing much of a survey. How much is enough? They may think $2 million is enough. If you keep that, if you keep that village in place for 2 more years, you have a $4 million surplus, probably more than that, because my taxes are going up at least 5% next year, right? We all got our tax bill, they're going up 5%, plus the on-capping, plus et cetera, et cetera. So if you got $1 million last year, you'll probably get about $1,070,000 this year. So
Well, thank you.
That's coming in.
We're bordering on 11 minutes on your, and we can't afford this for everyone, so.
I understand. I understand, and thank you for your forbearance, Kathy. I would only ask you to look at the scholars on this body that I received at this holiday. And the scars on my body that I got from sitting in that very seat that you were and giving forbearance.
I understand. I'm saying this less for you, more for the public to acknowledge that you have wasted the time and this is an anomaly. And we're
Yes,
to hear this, so.
because I'm not on item 3.
Okay, you can, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And that concerns negotiations with Chelsea. And I would suggest that that's a good thing, But I would also remind the board that not every deal is a good deal. Not every deal is a good deal. Sorry, I'm really unused to applause. So I would think that it would behoove the board to sit down using whatever mechanisms they like, meeting with private individuals, meeting 2 among themselves, to develop a negotiating strategy and goals with what they want to accomplish in this negotiation. Because if you go in without a factual base and without a clear guidelines of what you know, you'll get taken to the cleaners. I can almost guarantee you, you'll get taken to the cleaners. And I'd better not go there. So again, that's up to you, however you want to go about it. But I think there ought to be guidelines developed by the board about what we want to accomplish in this negotiation. What is going to be the price at which we pass water on through to Chelsea? What is going to be our share of the infrastructure costs? Those are things, and I think once the board has guidelines developed, it really helps the negotiator or the negotiating team or however you structure this. Because then the Chelsea can just come with a proposal and you can say, I'm sorry, my board won't go for that. You solve that right away. So you cut it right off. So I would urge you, so there are two action items I would urge you to do tonight, which is, to come up with your plan of what you really want to accomplish from the city. And secondly, to be aggressive now that the environment calls for it in our funds, and indeed use interest rate arbitrage. Just as an example, let us say we do have $7 million and we want to take $5 million of that and spend it. $1 million is going out May 1st. So, we know that's gone, that's the bond payment. But you're still have $1 million in the kitty and then $5 million to invest. $5 million at 4% annual interest is $200,000 a year, or 25% of the township budget. That's real money. That's real money. And so I would urge us to use the interest rate environment to good effect, and to govern on behalf of the taxpayers of the township. Thank you for extending this time and courtesy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have a lot of history and knowledge, so we're here for it. Thank you. So Mr. Williams was supervisor here, in case people didn't know that. Trustee Schulze just said, do people know who Mr. So I will say that, and that's the reference to the scars, yeah. So thank you for your service for those years.
Thank you for your focus.
Okay, still public comment. And third, yes, Patrick.
I don't know if I can add very much to Mr. Williams' comments, but I'm going to try to add my perspective as a resident who moved here in 2009 and was suddenly confronted by the township's debt obligations and our inability to pay them by 2011. It was kind of a shock just after moving here. And a lot of people know me. That's when I started this thing called the Free Sylvan Group. That's when we tried to get a better handle on what was going on with the water and sewer and what we should do about it, and the millage votes coming up and how should we vote and all that stuff. We went door to door, just informing people basically, and listening to what they were saying back then when the millage vote was being considered. The millage vote only passed by 7 votes. And we would be in a whole different ballpark if it didn't pass. But that village was represented to the township as being a last resort, which is echoing what Mike said. Almost everybody that I know who voted for it with the understanding that there were no other options and the township was out of money. We have to maintain good faith with our residents and our voters. The township is no longer out of money. To continue collecting the 4.4 mils, even after the premise for it is gone, I think is wrong. We do need to have, some reserve funds in the township, whether that's 2 million or 3 million or whatever, remains to be determined. And as Mike said, that's a political decision. But it really shouldn't be a political decision about the principle of the whole thing. The principle of the whole thing is that 4.4, it was represented as a last resort, and it no longer is so. So it seems to me that by next year at the latest, we'll be able to make a decision about this. If the tap fees are already, if the tap fees are an additional 1 million above what's shown on the general ledger right now, then we could be in that position to make a decision this year. We'll have the 2 million cushion this year. Okay, so I'm not gonna go on as long as Mike though, but that's my perspective as somebody who has hit with this. There's a lot of residents with it. I have an issue of my own coming before the board tonight too. I don't know what else I can say about it beyond what I've already said. It's gone through so many iterations. The planning commission at least held what I'll say is a dignified session last time, and, you know, went through the review criteria. Maybe some of them just kind of brushed through, but had an actual vote. I urge the board to scrutinize very carefully what the rationale for that vote was, because it's not just the vote, but the reasoning behind it that counts. I'm personally biased, of course, it's my project. Everybody is personally biased in some sense because they have a certain vision for the township or whatever. But this is really a lot about the review criteria that have been established and about the master plan and stuff like that. Be as objective as you can. One comment I'll make, that hasn't been explored very much is whether there's an identifiable public need for this. That's one of the review criteria. I may not have come fully prepared with documentation, but Ms. Snyder spoke about this as somebody who's been searching for a community like this for a long time and had to give up, unfortunately. Just built her house in Sylvan Township in separately. But we have a lot of people that come through our meetings searching for something like this. They call it an agri-hood, more or less. There's a name for it that didn't exist back in the day, but does now, of a mixed residential and agricultural development. There is no such development in this area, as far as I know, for at least a radius of 50 miles. In other parts of the country there are. So there's obviously demand. We actually have a group that meets, that is interested in moving in there. Finances are a big barrier for some of these people, though. It's not as affordable as we would have hoped. Whether you pass the rezoning or not makes a difference in affordability. It's not a difference like night and day, but it just may be that amount that matters for some people. So those are my comments, and I'm sorry if I went over 3 minutes. I didn't go over too much. Thank you very much.
Other public comment? Yes.
My name's Chris Kuhn, and I'm a relatively new resident of Sylvan Township. And I'm one of those people who would be likely to move to the land that Patrick was just speaking about, the Conway Road property. Except that we're just finishing the house we already started building. So it's a little late for us. I think everybody living rurally, certainly around here, would know that farming is a very labor-intensive process, and the opportunity to participate in farming as a community, as a neighborhood member, is something that we consider very valuable. And it would be an opportunity to participate and to make the whole farming operation easier, both financially and also labor-wise. And those are issues facing most farmers, and the problem is how to deal with it. And the proposal for the Conway Road property is one potential way of doing it. As Patrick said, there aren't any real good examples around here. There are some examples across the country, but around here, the property's been mostly a bit expensive to try and do this with. So I encourage, the raising of the number of residents is allowed to participate in this farming operation. I think it would help a lot. Thank you.
Yes. Yep.
My reason for being here tonight is kind of twofold. First off, I'd like to thank Amanda for her presence, whether it be on behalf of the township or on her own, for attending the funeral proceedings today for Dawn Campus. Secondly, how many were here for the budget meeting? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. So what I'd like to address next is for the other 15 or so that weren't here. The budget meeting that was approved last week really didn't have anything in it for you, the people who pay the taxes. It has everything to do with that, because it was all pay raises. Except, I will thank the board, I think there's consideration for a recreation finally after 7 years of bidding. So I will thank them for at least considering. Hasn't been funded yet, it's not operational, but it will at least allow us to do some grant writing and maybe get some money in there. But for those of you who haven't reviewed this budget or weren't here, there were several things that were kind of smoke and mirrors, sleight of hand magic with salaries. Not only did they get increases of 9, 10, 12% in the last couple of years, but they grandly were going for 8.7% this year because that's what Social Security got. They had to point out to them that because Social Security hadn't been raised in 20 years. They immediately went for a 5.5% increase rather than look at the price index, consumer price index average, which is only 3.28, but they gave themselves a 5.5% increase. That wouldn't be so bad, except also under general government, there's a listing for 42,000 for potential office manager. For those of you who don't know, I was supervisor from 12 to 16. There's not enough duties in the world for an office manager. They would have to take some of their statutory duties and pass them off on the office manager. Then there's also deputy HR duties, $5,000. HR duties. Well, that's supposed to be for the board. And I wouldn't have been here probably tonight, except I saw an action item tonight. Is the supervisor would like to get paid that $5,000 extra for HR duties. She's not in charge of HR. The entire board is in charge of HR. The supervisor, Carol, reports to the supervisor. The supervisor's only requirement is to have a drawer marked in employees' files. It's the only HR duty she's supposed to have. Otherwise, all complaints come before the board. Plus, there's under HR duties, it's listed as deputy. This 5,000 was approved on the deputy. You now can't go in and take that money because it's been approved under deputy, not supervisor. So you have to have a whole amendment to be able to do that. But that's not your duties anyways. You're not in charge of HR. Then there's another one for code enforcement. $10,000 for code enforcement. This lady's in charge of code enforcement. Why do we need to pay somebody extra for code enforcement? Unless she doesn't want to do it. And if she doesn't want to do it, then we need to hire somebody else. And put out an ad for somebody to do code enforcement, which is why she was hired. So that's why I say a couple of things, sleight of hand here, that are amiss and that you all should be aware of. Second thing I want to comment on is why we're giving away money, 1.2 million here and whatever it is, 5 million. First of all, we don't know how much money we have. So we shouldn't go ahead in the next couple of months and try and figure out a way to pay everything off, because as Mike mentioned, we still have a lot of sewer maintenance that has to be done. But I've mentioned it to a few of you. Some of you don't know about it because you're new to the area. But back in the early days, 02, 3, 4, something like that, for about 10 years, the only area that made money was the Lakes Sewer Fund. We made money. We made an extra 80,000 every year. Now, surprisingly enough, the water tower was losing $75,000 to $80,000 a year. They took that 80,000 from the Lake Sewer Fund and moved it over and paid the water bills for 10 years. Now, because there's no longer that money there building up, those of us that live at the lake, our quarterly maintenance, aside from the 4.4 mils that we all pay that we don't like, but our bill out there is $378 or something every quarter, because the money wasn't there to pick up the cost of grinder pumps and other maintenance issues. So you take an average of 80,000 a year for 10 years, and some good forensic accounting could uncover this. You got about $800,000 out of that potential of 5 million, 7 million, whatever it is, that is owed to the Lake Sewer Fund to pay for the maintenance that we are going to have, that most of you know. I don't think anybody else except Kurt and I are, I'm sorry, are from the lake. And there's only 3 of us here that are from the lake. So you're kind of think like, well, geez, we should just let them rot on the vine. Well, guess what? That fund is owed 800,000 from the 5 million that they have. It'll come up, and there'll be probably an argument, but if Mike was still here, he could attest to it also. Thank you.
Yes.
Renee Townsend, I live on Spruce Run Drive. I just wanted to speak a little bit to transparency, which, you know, we've talked about before, but I see we still have some things on the agenda that are a little bit concerning. You know, it seems like we're trying to restrict what gets put into the minutes, which I don't think is right. I think people have a right to know what happened at these meetings without having to watch an hour and a half or 2-hour video, which I think at this point we can't even do. So I don't think we should be restricting what goes into the minutes. That Freedom of Information Act policy is a little concerning as well. I agree with charging a reasonable rate for things like that, but it seems like making it mandatory is a bit much. And if that's how we're trying to make money, I mean, at the last meeting, we talked a great deal about the amount of money that is sitting in a checking account, not earning interest. You know, we could have been making tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars on that. And we're worried about making sure we charge $25 or whatever it is for a FOIA request. That seems a little bit silly. You guys work for us, and we should know what is going on. We should know what you're doing. We shouldn't be trying to hide things and not put them in the minutes. We shouldn't be cutting off discussions and going right to votes. We have a right to know what's going on. And that needs to come from you. You guys need to be transparent. So I just like to urge that. Thank you.
Yes.
Second Renee's statement about not enjoying my.
Thank you all for.
Just very quick on this. I don't know if anyone else saw it today, but the Dexter Township Supervisor resigned after 2.5 years, citing inadequate pay and growing demand, excuse me, growing demands of the job. But they're bigger than we are, but I think that illustrates that in today's society, litigious society, things move more slowly and you have to just dot every I and cross every T. Secondly, I spent several $100s on books from the Michigan Township Association, and just to try and learn what really are the duties of everyone here. And one of the things that surprised me, and it relates to the salaries and things that we're talking about, but they said personnel costs in a large township, which we are not, can make up 70 to 80% of the expenditures, which I didn't see any detail. I just read it in here, but it's from the Michigan Township Association. So, and then lastly, I'd like to reinforce something that I believe the supervisor spoke of last month, the month before, about civility. Just during the last 7 to 10 days, I've seen one of the board attacked for a physical matter. And I've heard good advice given in a way that I would personally not listen to the advice in the way it was presented. So I'd just like everybody to kind of be a little more civil in how we're approaching it and speak to these folks. And I don't agree with all of them either, but speak in the way you want to be spoken to. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sandy Edwards. The board knows, many of you probably do not. I am a governmental accountant. I was at the budget meeting. I thought we had a very good discussion on the way things are supposed to be recorded. It was good to hear someone else with the accounting background throw many of the same thoughts out. The one thing I'm going to disagree with him on, when it comes to governmental accounting, not all money can be used for everything. It can only be used for the purpose of which it was collected. The money they're taking from us to make these bond payments can only be used for the bond payments. Water tap fees can only be used in the water fund. Sewer tap fees can only be used in the sewer fund. Sewer use fees, water use fees can only be used in those funds. You cannot take from one and give to the other. They can take general tax money and spend that any way that they want because that's their operating money. That's full discretion. But you cannot take money earmarked for one thing and use it for another. It's not allowed. And if that's what this township has been up to, then I need to have a conversation with your CPAs that I know very well, because it's not allowed. It's against the law, and you can be taken to tax very strongly with that. So you've got to get your financial house in order. I've said it many times. Many of the residents have said it. I agree with the former supervisor. In this market, to not have that money earning as much interest as you can get, it may not be criminal, but man, is it's
look at the word. It's just wrong. You all know it's wrong. We've been singing this song now for a few months. He's absolutely right. As I told you at the last meeting, and I see that Rod took my advice, put it on the agenda to join class, 4.87%. Why in tarnation are you even thinking of paying a payment worth 2.5% or 3% if you can take that same money and make 4.87 and have the money to do some of these repairs without taking it from the general fund tax money? Come on, let's be a little bit smart here.
Yes.
Mike Van Gore, Mr. President. I wasn't able to be here last week, so but I would just ask the board for. And I'm gonna echo some things that were said here on these, fiscal responsibility, transparency, fiduciary responsibilities for all of us. Yeah, that's all we can ask. Thank you.
Any other public comments? All right. All right. And finally, jump it down here. That was a nice long time to hear from everybody. Thank you for that. So, okay. Next on our agenda is a presentation from our accountant, Kimberly Williams. He is here to just talk to us a little bit. Thank you, Kimberly.
Okay, the microphone makes me nervous too, so sorry. Kimberly Haynes, I am not a resident of Sylvan Township. I own a local business in Chelsea. I contract with multiple government agencies from which I do, general ledger keeping, bookkeeping. I work with the auditors at completing the audits annually. I was asked in 2021 if I would come in and relieve another group that was here working on the general ledger. They were leaving, they needed to fill in, so I've been working on the books for 2 years. Typically I don't come to board meetings. I stay out of politics, that's not my real house, kudos to everybody who likes it, but I don't. What I do know is I do know numbers, I do know accounting. Currently, what I've heard so far today are valid concerns. Is that saying that I did my job wrong? No, not at all. For the 2 years that I have been here, I have brought up some of my own issues with fiscal responsibility. It was brought to my attention about a week and a half ago that certain things were said in the budget meeting pertaining to my skills as an accountant, pertaining to the work that I do. So I just do want to make some clarification. Basically, I apologize, I had to print off a few things to keep my notes straight. In the office following that budget meeting, one of the things that was brought up is the municipal code. That's what governs our books. That is not what governs our books. There is no such thing as municipal code. In fact, it is 1968 Public Act 2 and also 1919 Public Act 71. Both of those are under the oversight of the Community Engagement and Finance Division. They are responsible for implementing new legislations that affect the accounting and audit responsibilities of local government units. Primarily Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act of 1968 is basically what we're taking a look at. I won't bore you with a lot of the details. I do apologize. Basically stated that our chart of accounts does not match the uniform chart of accounts of the state of Michigan. I do disagree with that. We did go through a conversion. I've recently printed off the chart of accounts from the state of Michigan website. Again, all the information I am giving you, please feel free to look up at michigan.gov. It is all there for public view. The numbers match. General fund 101, our general fund is 101. Now, it does state it should be done by fund. It is done by fund. We currently have general fund, special sewer fund, water fund, And then we have our tax fund, which our tax fund is a custodial account. It's an in and out. We are not allowed to touch that legally. As far as, you know, we receive taxes and the taxes are dispersed out to the units. General fund is the fund that we have access to. That's the one where they can make the appropriations. I won't speak to water or sewer tap fees. That was before I started here. I have no concrete data to back that up. None was presented to me by anybody in the township. So again, I can't speak for what I don't have the information. What I can assure you though is, and I'm not sure who said it, potentially 7 million in the bank. The bank account has 5 million. In March, I don't have March's bank reconciliation done, or April 4th, kind of hard for me to do that. Cash receiving is not done by me. I do not do the data entry. What I do is I fix what other people are doing. I look for mistakes and I make sure that they are corrected. I can tell you it was cash receipted because I've seen it in our general ledger, I've seen it in the bank account. More than likely it was posted to a balance sheet item. Reason being is accountants prior to me set up our cash receiving system in order to reduce mistakes and make sure they're not incorrectly recorded. They will put them in a balance sheet account, which is a holding account, until someone can go and look at it and fix it and move it out to where it goes. So we did pass our audit last year with an unqualified opinion. That's the highest opinion that the auditors are able to give. What that means is our books comply with accounting, generally accepted accounting principles, that we comply with the Uniform Chart of Accounts, that they did not find fraud within our books. Our error rate was low. There was one concern that they brought up during the audit, and we fixed it, and that was basically just some of the funds that should have went in special sewer were accidentally deposited in the general fund. When it's been moved out, correct the situation. But other than that, again, I can't speak to fiscal responsibility as far as should you pay off the bond, should you not pay off the bond. I have my own personal opinion. I'm not a resident here. I don't feel comfortable sharing it anyway. But
Thank you, Kimberly. Okay. All right, thank you. It's nice to see you at a board meeting. As you said, Kimberly doesn't usually come to the board meetings, but she's here and she's working. It's so nice to have a report presentation from you. All right, the next part on the agenda is the consent agenda, which contains the minutes, presentation of bills, correspondence, reports.
Or move to approve the consent agenda.
I will move to support so we can have discussion. So motion by Kurt, supported by me. I spoke to Amanda today about the March 7 minutes, and I would like to, I felt like there was a portion that was missing at the end. I spoke about a little bit about, you know, Renee and I had this conversation where she spoke at public comment that the communication that hadn't transpired, or she thought hadn't transpired, was due to a switch in our domain name. And at the end of the meeting, I felt that I had said, I went home after I heard Renee say this, and I searched my emails. I didn't see an email from Renee, so I reached out to Renee and said, hey, I heard you say this. I didn't see an email. I think there's a mistake. And that's where we discovered that indeed the domain had changed. And then she sent me an email and we had a nice conversation. I just saw that that part was missing from the minutes, and it was important to me that that be included in the minutes. It's something that I, you know, went a little extra on. I mean, it's not even extra, it's just what we should do for each other. And without that information in there, it didn't put me in, I'll just say, the correct light. So I asked Amanda if we can include that. That's where I believe I addressed it, because I can't address it. It's not, you know, at public comment, we're not doing it back and forth. So I believe it was at the Board of Trustee comments. So I would just ask that we could include that language. And I don't know if we want to wait on approving those until we see the language, because if we approve it and we haven't seen the language, then I would rather wait to do that. Well, however you do them for the minutes, yeah, I mean, if I said, however you do it for the minutes, I felt like it was something I said and I didn't see it reflected.
Okay.
So if you could go back and look, that would be great.
I would also like to pull the amendments from the March 21 draft budget. Period. I went back and listened to the recording tonight, and there is just. Seems like things are just pick and choose as to what was put in and what wasn't put in. And there is a ton missing, if that's how you want to do it, including my comments that I made during the meeting. So I'd like to maybe go back over those and see what was missing out of those and correct that, please.
So what are you asking for? You want your verbatim comments again?
There's a lot of stuff missing.
A lot of information. Try to paraphrase so that they're, because I've been told they're too long, so.
Yeah, I get that, that's why I say. You're gonna make them long, don't pick and choose.
No, if I'm making it long and then you don't want them so long and then a paraphrase and then that doesn't work either. So.
Well, and I think the difference is whether it's everything or whether it's not everything, because everything is literally verbatim, and like you're saying. And so if we're not doing everything, it's just, and I was clerk, I ran into this also with past supervisors about minutes. But I think that's the danger, because when it looks like it's verbatim and then something's missing, like was important to me from that meeting, then it's not everything. So it's not disclosing everything, but if we're gonna do everything, then let's do everything. Let's make sure everybody's comments are included, mine too. And Renee's and everyone's are included, and not just some people's. And I think that's how it sort of feels sometimes, so.
Well, I think I was trying to capture more verbatim, and then I was hearing from you that that's not what you wanted, so I tried to scale it back and tried to paraphrase, so it's a really challenging situation. I mean, I can just try to go verbatim. They'll be longer, but we need to accept that.
I think what we're waiting for is in this discussion that we had earlier, when I said we should be using Michigan Township Association's suggestions for note taking. And then, which is way shorter than anything you all have seen. That's the way it's supposed to be done. It's not supposed to be capturing every conversation. It's supposed to be capturing actions. But then Amanda said, there are people who want to know everything that's gone on. And because this is videotaped, then we need to have the videotape available for people who want to hear everything that was said. And so here we are in purgatory, trying to figure out how to get the videos posted. Now, some of you may know how to do that. We don't. And I have asked two different people. Kathy sent an email to IT Right, and I don't know if you've heard back. I sent an email to IT Right. They didn't respond to me at all. So we're in the part where Amanda can continue to take horrible notes. It take her hours to transcribe. As soon as we can get it posted on either our website or on YouTube, then we can go to the MTA rules. That's just how it's going to happen. We can't go to the MTA rules until we have the videotape of the meeting available to people to watch. But we're hung up by nobody helping us figure out how to post that. And we have a couple of things going. I am going to be attending the School of Information's Student Day, and at that April 17th on campus. And at that time, I will be able to talk to faculty members there about how to hire a School of Information student to do this for us, because we can't figure out how to do it. So anyway, all right, we're working on it.
So to move this along, can you get in writing to Amanda what you feel is missing? Would that work?
I would, For mine or for Rod's?
Oh.
Well, I would like to listen to the recording and then I can type out what I said and I can give it to her, but I think that's part of what her thing is, right? I think that she could probably do that.
Then,
Rod's,
I mean, there's so much missing compared to the recording of what's here. Including my comments, Sandy's comments. A lot of other talk in between, I mean, there's tons.
There was a lot being said
Yep.
very quickly during that meeting.
so my question is, how do we want to resolve it? Are you gonna get it in writing to Amanda? She's gonna put it in the notes, then my motion is to accept the consent agenda as going to be modified by Rod and Ken. Does
No,
that
I'm-
work, or what do we,
I'm not
what's
gonna
the
modify
solution?
it.
What's the solution?
well, the solution for the issue that I had, my missing statement, I think it's pretty easy to go back and listen to the recording. Amanda and I talked about that. I think that's fine. That's fine. She can listen to it and then put it in there. If I'm mistaken, I didn't say anything, then there won't be anything. So we can approve those next time. The bigger one is, sounds like the public hearing minutes. Public hearing minutes are tricky. They need to be, different than regular meeting minutes, which really only need to contain the motions. Public hearing has to have the public's input and all of that sort of stuff. So it is really long. It needs to contain, and that's where we have the back and forth in a public meeting where we don't normally have that here. Public comment, thank you, and we move on. So it's a different style of meeting. It's a different style of minutes. So. I see you raising your hand.
I just have a possible suggestion that might be helpful. I believe there are voice text applications. And it might be possible to take the audio from the video and then publish that as a computer generated transcript that may have errors. But
Yeah, when I was clerk years ago, we got Dragon software and we rolled on the floor laughing at the things that Dragon interpreted, because there's a lot of noise in the room. People are talking, people are whispering, you're loud, I'm not. Yeah, so it was really hard. Maybe if the programs, has improved in the last 5 years, but it's kind of the tricky part of being in this room where some of us are on mics and some of us aren't. Makes it difficult, but I love that suggestion. If it's, something that would be for us.
So how do you wanna repair my motion? Cause we gotta move ahead.
Yeah, we gotta move
Yeah,
on.
we-
It's already after 8 o'clock.
We're either gonna
So-
reject the meeting minutes, or we're going to get more information to Amanda to include in the meeting minutes, or what other options do we have?
I think for right now, we reject the budget.
All right, and are we allowed to do that if we reject the budget meeting minutes?
So, I think we just don't approve them. I think they can come back then, in an approved fashion. And, I'd be willing to listen through the recording again if it's helpful, but if Amanda's, if it's not,
Right.
well, if that's,
Well, I'm not sure what value that adds. I mean, if there's something material in here that we're missing that needs to be in there, then by all means, we should get to Amanda. But if we're just gonna put her through an exercise.
It's not an exercise.
It needs-
You should listen to the recording and go with the minutes through the recording
For the,
and you'll see.
for the budget meeting.
Yeah.
I was there.
I know,
I'm not sure.
so was I.
What was missing?
And I went through the recordings today. And I listened to the recordings.
So
I went down through the meetings, through the minutes with the recordings.
So I will need to know what specifically you want.
If you're gonna do them long, I want everything in there instead of pick and choose.
Okay, so we're gonna redo these meetings, just the budget.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping.
Please.
It's incorrect. You can amend, but you cannot just outright reject the minutes are the clerk's responsibility.
right, and then they get approved by the board. So if the board doesn't approve them, then they'll just roll over until the next month.
But you have to make the suggestion has been suggested of how you would improve what you want to say. And those can be taken into consideration.
Thank
And
you,
then the
Scott.
board votes.
Thank you, Scott.
You can't, I'll just reject.
Understood. So the board approves the minutes, and then so sounds like we're approving the sixth. You're gonna listen to the seventh and include that, so we can approve the seventh next month. As for the March 21st minutes. You know, I don't know what the solution is. We just don't approve them right now and have a conversation, or listen to the minutes, and if we all listen to it and send Amanda what we feel should be in there, or something verbatim.
I spent 2 hours on it today. Ready, I didn't know that I was gonna be asked to write it all down.
All right, so for tonight, we're on the consent agenda. We're approving the March 6 minutes, presentation of bills. Correspondence, was that something you wanted to? Committee reports, board reports, and department reports. So those will be things approved on the consent agenda.
6 minutes.
Yeah. I don't think we're approving any other minutes tonight. Because you'll get to the board so they can look at that, approve it, and then the March 21st. I don't want to hold up the board meeting anymore. We've already been here now, it's 15 minutes. We're just not approving them tonight. And I think, you know, we can come to a solution. If Amanda, I mean, I'm at the point now where we've already been here, I'm willing to listen to it and help, or if you feel like just verbatim is then what you're gonna do. I mean, there's already 7 pages, so there's probably not a lot that's not there. Or, you know. So. All right, so that was a lot, so.
So the
Motion.
the same, just modified to not, approve the March 7th, March 21st.
Okay, and I will support that amended motion. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed say nay. Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the regular agenda.
We'll move to approve the regular agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Kurt, supported by Rod. I have some discussion. One thing is, I would like to move the consideration of the rezoning to the first thing under new business. If that's acceptable to the board.
Say that again.
Move the consideration of the rezoning request. It is last on new business, and I would like to move it to the first item.
Okay.
It's a big one. I would also like to add to new business, cost of living increase for employees. I didn't have these numbers crunched for Thursday, I apologize. It is the board approved cost of living increase for the employees of Sylvan Township. So I would like to add that cost of living raise for employees.
So motion is adjusted to reflect the additional reason on add cost.
Still second.
Is there anything else? No, I think so. All right, any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed say nay. Thank you. Unfinished business. First item is minutes transcribing for Board of Trustee and Planning Commission. Trustee Schulte was ahead of her time and addressing this about 10 or 15 minutes ago. And yes, I did write to Kyle Shoemaker from the Shoemaker Group, who does our website. Asked him if he had any suggestions for posting the video, but I haven't heard back from him. He clarified my question, but didn't provide an answer.
I think a problem is everybody tells us, oh, it's so easy, go and look it up. Well, the first thing is you have to have a Gmail address, and we don't have Gmail here anymore. We're using Microsoft. So then we have to have a discussion about Well, anyway, we're not gonna talk about it now, but you can, it's just minutia that's keeping it from happening. And I'm hoping that I'm gonna run into a faculty member or a great student who's gonna be able to do it for us. That's all.
All right, so are we, tabling this item?
Yes.
Okay.
For a second.
Thank you. Motion to table by Kathy, supported by Kurt. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Updated policy regarding tap fees. Bob Skull, he is gone right now, he on vacation, but before he left, he just modified the form pretty, minimally, but it's, a revised policy. Pretty short and sweet. Just remove that the completed tap fee form is going to be in file with the Department of Public Works. And then prior to connection, all tap fees are to be paid with no outstanding balance. I think it said before that all engineering fees were to be paid with no outstanding balance, and we just wanted to make sure that that was tap fees.
Make a motion to approve. Yeah, 190.
Kurt, the second.
Thank you, Kurt. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
So just definitions here, tap fees, as what Bob Skull said last BOT meeting, was that that's what you pay to buy into the system. Then when we talk, connection fees, that's actually physical, connecting the meter and doing all that. So this admin fee here is talking about tap fees specifically, not the connection fees. Is that correct?
That's
Where it
correct.
is?
Yep.
So it says prior to connection, all tap fees are to be paid with no outstanding balance.
So that's part of our tap fee policy, I guess, that prior to connection, the tap fees are gonna be paid. And the payments would be made to the treasurer's office. So the township water and sewer tap fee form must be completed and signed. Completed tap fee form will be on file.
That's all right.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion by Rod, supported by Kurt, to approve admin 190. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is admin 110, Freedom of Information Act policy.
I'm just trying to fix the Freedom of Information Act policy. At one point, there was some discussion that one FOIA didn't get paid for. And there was some confusion about that, so I'm trying to take the confusion out of it. So that we make sure that all FOIAs are paid for properly. You've got the old one and you've got a new one in front of you.
The new one's in blue, Rod. You see like a red.
No,
Or the new one would be.
yes,
It looks like some of the changes are just to properly direct people to the website with the new initiative, the new .com.
yeah, I mean, that was a big one, I think. That was really messed up. And then the rest is kind of wording from that will.
On what page is that? Page 5.
Yeah, a fee will be charged.
So is this specifically for FOIA requests?
Yes.
If somebody comes in and asks for information, is it a FOIA request? You know, you're happy of this, is that whatever.
If people come in and ask all things, all the time, information,
So that would,
we answer the question for them.
that would fall under this policy then. No.
They changed. Brought up the date really. On page 7. For computer disks and computer tapes. Which is no longer used. So those were now. USB drives, USB external hard drives, or other digital or similar media.
So it looks like a big change in worded, end of page 7, top of page 8.
Yeah.
Is that all being? Oh, that's being lined out.
That takes away any confusion. Some of these things in here, like under section 7, when I converted it from a PDF back to Word, because no one could find the word, it put some funky figures in there that were never part of the FOIA in the first place, and I had to fix all those back.
So my only thought is, having been there with this Freedom of Information Act policy, this is a sample policy we took from the Michigan Township Association website. And so it always says, you know, this is a sample, you should have your attorney look at it. So I'm not opposed to any of the changes in here. I do wonder about, I would wonder if we want to get an opinion from Thal, on page 7, just because maybe the search for copying of a public record, it used to say maybe waived or reduced in the sole judgment of the FOIA coordinator if the waiver or reduced fee is in the public interest, because it can be considered as primarily benefiting the general public. Township board may identify specific needs or records it deems it should be available at no charge or reduced cost. So I just wanted to make sure, just now it's occurring to me that maybe we should check with him to make sure it's okay that we strike that and that's not in there for a particular reason.
And that's where I thought some
So-
confusion might.
Well, I would like to, I'm waiting if you want, to do a discussion for the motion or if you do that now.
You know what, we're kind of doing that now, but let's, I don't have written down a motion or, so I will move that we approve Freedom of Information Act policy. ABM 1110 to get to a discussion. We'll just put it like that. All right. So those are my comments. We should have.
Okay, so I looked at, this is the Michigan Township Association's introduction to the Freedom of Information Act. I hope that they give out to give us some guidance on the statute. So, and I spoke with Catherine Malhut, who actually wrote this. And under fees, she has a note. And it says a discussion of the fees now authorized under FOIA can be complicated. But it should be noted that a township is never required to charge for any fee for any FOIA request or any other request to inspect or receive copies of public records. The cost of providing the public with access to public records may be best viewed as one of the elemental functions of a township that, along with assessing, tax collecting, and elections, is provided for, at least in part, with a township's general operating revenues. Some FOIA requests can create excessive or unusual costs for a township in time or materials. And the act does provide to some degree for those instances. But just as voters are not charged a fee at the door of the polling place for exercising your right to vote, the public is legally entitled to full and complete information regarding the affairs of government and the official acts of those who represent them as public officials and public employees. And then when I looked at the Attorney General guidance from the state of Michigan on how to interpret statute, you know, the Freedom of Information statute. Under fees, it says Fees are not to be charged for the cost of examination, review, deletion, and separation of exempt from non-exempt information unless failure to charge a fee would result in unreasonably high costs to the public body because of the nature of the request in the particular instance, and the public body identifies the nature of the unreasonably high costs. So I read this and I look at these changes and I feel that that actually conflicts with MTA guidance and what the state of Michigan, what their guidance is for the statute. I mean, pardon?
And our policy.
What you're proposing conflicts, what you're proposing, because you're proposing that we charge for everything. The state is specifically saying we're not to charge for the cost of examination, review, deletion, and separation of exempt from non-exempt information, unless a failure to charge a fee would result in unreasonably high costs to the public body, because the nature of the request in the particular instance, when the public body identifies the nature of the unreasonably high costs.
So you're saying that when a company comes in fishing for information like they do, that we don't charge it?
If it's under an unreasonably high cost, like we did receive one where somebody wanted every single election piece and every single email that we had, that's an unreasonably high cost. If a resident comes in and they want information and all I need to do is get that information, scan it and send it, I don't think that's reasonable to charge them. If they want physical copies, 100%, we need to charge for those copies.
Okay, that helps because examination was one of the words in there. So examination is just somebody coming in and looking at something. Right?
Or it's me having to examine them and redact something.
Okay.
And we have a means, which I didn't understand this at first, because the reason we have the email system that we do, and we have IT right, they can actually do these searches, and I didn't even realize that, which makes it, and they don't charge us. So it's quick, it's easy, and then, you know, it doesn't take that much time.
Because in the past, we have had FOIA requests where people have requested emails, and it was very onerous for the clerk at that time to produce all of those. So this is the benefit of going to the 365. It was going to alleviate the work for the FOIA coordinator. So for those FOIAs that have emails, that will be beneficial. But I know there are times where you don't charge for information that's available on the website, you know, different things. So I think if this is something that the board wants to do or think about, it would behoove us to have the attorney look to see if it's something we could do.
Right, because so if somebody comes in and they want copies,
I would, of course, we have a fee right next to the copy machine, and that's what we charge them. But it would actually take me more time if we pass this to go get the money than to just fulfill the FOIA and send the information out, because I have to wait for the payment at that point. It's
Right.
more time.
Right, for some of them, right?
Yeah, and where do you draw that line?
yeah, it seems real unclear.
It's very unclear.
Unreasonably high costs.
What's unreasonable?
Right.
It's $10, $20, $100. What's unreasonably high? It's not clear.
Should we see if we can get that clarity
Yeah.
from the attorney, and maybe he can provide us, you know, he's a municipal attorney, deals with these
Yeah.
things all the time.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with that.
Ask him to define
I'd be
what's
very happy with
unreasonable.
that.
All right, I'm gonna modify my motion to table this item for information from the attorney. Do you
I'll still
support
second
that?
Mhm.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. All right, new business. So the consideration of the conditional rezoning request. So I have my words here from last time. When this matter comes up before the board, I will be recusing myself from the vote, as I mentioned last time. But I spoke to our attorney today, late, it was at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And he had reservations about this being on our agenda tonight, the board considering it. Until we have all the documents, including approved planning commission minutes. The draft planning commission minutes are acceptable, he said. I think they've been used in the past, but these particular draft minutes, he wasn't, exactly comfortable with. So his recommendation to us is we, table this matter. The planning commission is gonna have a meeting in a couple of weeks. They will approve the minutes, and then the board will have those approved minutes to, use for their deliberation on this item. And so I don't know how to handle this, because if we were voting on it, I would be recusing myself due to my business relationship with Mr. Ziske, being a part owner in the Agricole Farm Stop downtown, selling local produce and locally made items. Because of the business relationship, I don't feel I can be unbiased, and I want to avoid the appearance of impropriety. So, having said that,
So I'll move to, table conditional rezoning request.
Oh.
Next.
I'll second.
all right, thank you. Motion by Kurt, supported by Rod. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, say nay. Thank you, and I apologize. That was sort of a late thing coming out. I appreciate you all coming up today. And the good news is you'll have an opportunity again next month to come out and say the things again. So I apologize. Okay. Then we're going back up to the top for the temporary gathering permit. And this is our ordinances reflect a temporary gathering permit needs to be pulled if an event has over 150 people. And we do have an event at the township that's being proposed. Let's see, that has more than 150 people. So this temporary gathering permit application. Amanda's been working on that in the fall. So I think we had this last time or at a different meeting, and we were concerned about the fees. And since then, Amanda wrote, and you want to speak to it, when you have to be notified.
We were wanting to make sure that the fee schedule that we were asking for made sense. And so I had reached out to the Western Consulting and asked what things they would need to do. Looking at events, kind of events that we were looking at, such and I did hear back from them today, and the gentleman we worked with said that they would anticipate needing to review temporary parking locations, proposed portable bathrooms, stormwater drainage patterns that would be impacted by the proposed activity, and ensuring there are no conflicts with existing infrastructure. So he was estimating it would be about a day's worth, which would be about $1,500. So when we were looking at the fees, again, Kathy and I were talking about it earlier. If there's 500 or more attendance, we would guess that probably would be an event where MCI would need to review those things. So we had thought about if it's 500 or more, we would ask for the $1,500 for MCI, and then CAFA charges $150 to review. Because in our ordinance, it calls for carnivals, festivals, fireworks displays. So we thought $1,650, 500 or more. And then for 150 to 500, it would be a smaller event, but there still would be some review necessary. So I wanted your thoughts on what would seem appropriate. I mean, MCI would probably need to come out, but they wouldn't need to review much, I guess.
Right, and we were kind of saying, MCI is gonna be looking at a paper, whether it's 300 people or 800 people. So, how much more, or what would be the amount for that lower number of people? And we would be changing this on our fee schedule as well then, because right now our fee schedule was $1,500 for an outdoor gathering permit. So we would make sure that both of those documents were reflected with whatever the board would like to do tonight. I mean, I feel like MCIs, they're still gonna be doing some work, it's expensive work, it's worth every penny, you know, and we also don't wanna be onerous to the people, you know, if you wanna have a gathering at your home, with like 300 people, and you come forward and you whack you over the head with a, you know, $1,000, it's tough, nobody wants to do that, but we're also obligated to, you know, protect people and, so this is a tough one, it's a tough one. But we also, we don't wanna we don't want the residents, you know, if we go low and it's higher, then really the reality is the residents are gonna be paying for that, so we wanna be able to make sure we can get, as close to it, and honestly, I don't think we've ever had this come up in the past 8 years, so we may go another 8 years and not have this come up. But, you know, we should,
What, you mean a
we
big
should have
event?
something. Yeah, that's correct. Yep, yep.
I would. I think that for anybody who lives anywhere near there, it's gonna be just a major inconvenience. And it's just going to be way more complicated than I think the event presenters think that it's gonna be.
Well, and it's kind of a twofold thing, so we have, at Robin Hills Farms that is coming in front of the planning commission for these events, to be held, they have 6 events bundled a year. So they would fall under this, but this application is really, like Amanda said, it's for carnivals or a mini concert, or there's a lot of different things. Because I was like, oh, well, they're kind of coming planning commission, but then Carol helped me think, no, that's just for this. But someone could come and say, I want to have a big wedding, or I want to have a big something on my property, and I'm gonna invite 400 people. You know, and so what are those things then that you know, we would need to make sure. You know, MCI would probably still make sure there's parking, or it's not gonna be blocking the streets and.
So my question is, are they gonna have some police force there directing traffic?
Yes, I asked that they contract directly with the county.
Okay, yeah. That was my question. I just wanna make sure they're there.
So I think the only thing we need to do with this is
Right.
just decide what fees make sense. So that we can finish this and then give them this application.
Yeah.
So, you know, 500 or more for sure, 1,600, $1,650. That's what we know, what sense of MCI would charge plus capital review the site. But 150. It's going to be less, but it's not. We're still going to need something. Yeah.
But MCI has to really. Basically saying.
It seems like $150, $150 people.
Versus
800.
800. You know,
Right,
I mean, yeah, but I know what you're saying, they're looking at it anyway, it's just not as complicated or big.
So it might not take them
So-
as much time. And I think that's what Adam was saying here, maybe a day's work, but something that wasn't as complicated probably wouldn't take them a whole day. or review.
So we start off set at 1,000 and see what happens after if we ever have one. We can always change it.
Between 1,000 or 150 or more.
Or more.
And then we can always change it, fix it. And if it doesn't cost that much, we can refund them. Fix it.
Well, and that's the thing I said to Amanda, boy, I wish this was an escrow, because then if we didn't, we could just give it back to you, but it's a fee and that's distinct.
Okay,
Yeah,
So then,
so-
and then we correct it if it's wrong.
So I was just wondering, what if we said, we think that it would take them a half a day? So if it takes them a 1,500 for a full day, half would be 750 plus 150 for capital review, and that's 900.
Okay. I,
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's still a lot of money, it's, you
Yeah,
know,
it's-
it's-
all right, so 900 for 150 or more, and 500 or more, 1,650.
and then just write, and that's for all of us.
Yes.
All right,
So on these boxes that you check. These, do you change this? You always want,
yeah,
we have every
yeah.
paperwork for a plan resistant.
I think we talked about that last time. Like, Flavors of the paperwork for a tent. Okay,
And then who processes it? This application goes to board member, goes to Carol, goes to,
I think it goes to the clerk.
goes to clerk. And Amanda makes these decisions, you go through all this.
Well, I have to.
Because I processed the fireworks application and needed this additional application, I'm the one that worked on it, but I don't know.
And then is there an actual, is there an actual permit that we in paper that we, here's your permit? Got a fancy seal on it?
Yeah. I need to go do this application.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's too.
Yeah, probably this that would be signed, submitted.
And I don't see why you couldn't make that decision, it's all right
It's
there.
very,
Yeah.
Okay.
as long as I have the letter of approval from MCI, from CAFA,
Right.
I would need, just information from the sheriff. They have that contract in place for the traffic.
Mhm. Alright,
What's his problem?
all right, I will make a motion that we approve the temporary gathering permit application with the application fee of $900 for 150 or more attendants and 1,650 for 500 or more attendants. And change the flame resistant paperwork for a tent.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Great, thank you. All right, now we have to get that moving. Planning Commission's recording secretary vacancy. But I don't have the sheet in here. Well, we don't have an agenda sheet in here. I don't know if anybody proposed this or how this ended up on the agenda. But I will mention out loud that we are seeking a recording secretary for the Planning Commission. Stengel, who was doing that, has taken a new job and she's not available to do that position anymore. So we put an advertisement in the Sun Times. And if anyone is interested in taking minutes for the Planning Commission, there's an opportunity there.
So again, the process is that you listed that there's an opening. And then you'll come back to the board with applicants. And then you'll pick one and vote on it.
I guess, I can't remember how we did it last time, but it was,
last planning.
yeah. I know we were, that the clerk is the supervisor of that position, so perhaps it would be Amanda who would.
That's, I don't know, the hiring policy. The hiring policy
Right.
states that, actually states that the office staff will, post the
Mhm.
application, the job and the application.
Right,
And then I believe the supervisor then brings the applicants to the treasurer and clerk, the three of us interview.
okay,
And then from that, we bring it to the board.
yeah, is that one of our policies? I've never seen that hiring policy, but, and wait, and that's interesting. Okay. I've never seen that either. I might have my policy quickly right now. I'm interested for you to, can you send us what the policy number is?
No, I'm sorry. It's
It's
not,
not-
I misspoke. It's not in the policy book, it's in the handbook. It gives out, it does outline the way someone will be hired.
The handbook from where though? Where's the?
Our handbook.
Oh, the
our employee handbook.
employee handbook, right, okay, not the policy, okay,
Sorry, it's not
okay,
one.
got it.
It just gives, it outlines. how someone will be hired.
Right. So we have the job posted right now. I don't think it says in there, or we have ever established, we'll leave a position open for 2 weeks or something. I think if we have applicants, something like that, 2, 3 weeks, then would suffice. But we'll move that along. Any other discussion on that? All right. So I put on here consumers Mid-Michigan pipeline information. You've probably seen the flags on US 12. They're starting their pipeline project. Starts here in Sylvan Township, over by where they have the flares all the time, over by the, that's where they're starting, and the pipeline is gonna go up. There's a lot of information that's in here, and I tried to put some packets together. Consumers just sent us information, including a frequently asked questions form. And when you open that document, it says that they're gonna begin in May. Having been to an open house about 10 days ago, I wrote to them and said, I remember April 17th. And she said, yeah, we're gonna start clearing April 17th in Sylvan Township, but they're not gonna be bringing in the big trucks until May. So she said, that's how we put it. And I said, boy, that's not great for us, because you're already doing it, people can see it. And so she said, feel free, it was a Word document. She said, feel free to edit it. So I kind of put in parentheses that clearing will begin in Sylvan Township, April 17th. But that's my addition. So if you see it elsewhere, you won't see that bit of information. But it's a big project, and I've had people calling and saying, hey, how come we haven't heard about this? And, I don't know, we don't have a lot of control over it. It's consumers' project. But we have a lot of information. They provided us maps. There's that frequently asked questions. There's a brochure information about how they're going to repair the roads and places where they've been. So there's a lot of information there. I sent it to our website people. They put it on their notices. It's one big long document, so you can scroll through that and find that, or send me an email. There's multiple ways to get information on this pipeline project. I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. And there's a haul route that's been approved by the Waccamaw County Road Commission, and the Road Commission is requiring consumers to hold money in escrow to repair the roads that they're going to be using. So, so that will be there too. I just wanted to mention everybody again, the information is on the website and here, where you can email us. The good news is, since they're starting here, they'll be done here sooner, and I think they'll be done by mid-June. They have, yeah. Yep, they're gonna be done with our portion here in June, is what they were estimating. It's weather dependent, there's a lot of things. But that's when they anticipated they would be out of our hair, and then I don't know if they're gonna come around in the fall to do the roads, or maybe come around in spring. But I think I put the information in there that I received from the road commission too, so you can look through that. And kudos for our road commission for looking out for us and making sure they're putting money down. Appreciate that.
Appreciation for those guys. The storms.
Yes. Okay, so next on the agenda is this compensation to the supervisor. So the attorney tells me that through policies, I have been assigned the personnel director position. If we were a charter township, the supervisor is just the personnel director, period. It's just a matter of this becoming a charter township, it's the law. It's not so for general township. And so he said, when he looked at our policies, it identified the supervisor as personnel director. And this is a duty that's outside of my statutory duties. So I was considering asking for compensation for that. And there's a statute, I didn't bring it with me, but our salaries are to cover our statutory duties, and anything that you are assigned or asked to do outside of those, you can ask to be compensated for. The flip side of it is that I could also say I don't want to be personnel director. And so I didn't realize that really today until I talked to the attorney, and so I have something to kind of chew on and think about. Because if it is something that I'm going to be doing outside of my duties, it's fair to ask to be compensated for that. It's a big job, and you don't want to dabble in HR or personnel matters. And so I think I'm going to make a motion to table this item. So I can think about it and determine really what the best path forward would be for the township in this way.
Second.
Okay, thanks. The motion by Kennedy, supported by Brandon to table the compensation item. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Next item is lawn service maintenance. Or lawn contract. Looking for that, spring has sprung, so we're looking for a lawn mowing contract. We reached out to a couple different people. We did not reach out, I understand, to our current contractor. And it looks like we only have 2 bids. One is from Checkered Lawn Care in Gregory, and one is from Brian's Service here on Brown Drive in Chelsea.
Checkered Lawn Care comes in cheaper. Big time cheaper for the cemetery by a third. Which kind of surprised me. The rest of it's pretty close. Except for the spring cleanup for the cemetery.
I will move to accept Checkered Lawn Care as our lawn maintenance provider.
A second.
Motion by Kurt, supported by Rod, to award the lawn services to Checkered Lawn Care. Is there any other discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
So there have been limbs laying all over the place. That to me seems like it's part of the responsibility of whoever's cutting the grass to move the limbs out of the way. So Brian said, but
The other one did too.
did they,
Clean up. Spring leaf debris removal.
okay,
That just says Maple Grove. Is
Oh,
that just in the, I think they both maybe just quoted that, because that
They
appears
did.
to be. Oh, no, you're right, Brian's has clean up fallen sticks at Township Hall and clean up for Maple Grove, they're 2 different. Mhm.
You can't mow out there without it.
well, they did.
Out there?
Yes,
Well, that's the, they went
Right.
around,
they went around, thanks.
which is why we didn't send them offers. They did a lot of things. Maybe.
Well, so the cleanup fallen sticks becomes upon 1 time in the spring, but is that also something that if you follow through?
Well, and you know, before, the company that we had last year always did. When we would bring limbs down and stuff, they would pick them up and clean them. Last year. Something really happened to that company.
So celebrated in the past.
Yeah, they did do it in the past. I'll be happy to call them, and ask them to make sure.
Too,
You guys want,
yes.
I mean, I think we should approve it. My own personal opinion, so we can move forward instead of waiting another month to have the emails here.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, he's under on his pickup at Maple Grove, so there's, it's. Yeah. Okay.
And I'll send a message around to you guys.
I mean, my only thought was, if they're going to decide that they will charge more for the pickup and it comes in to Brian's, I would prefer to go with somebody in Sylvan Township.
And I will call, I will tell Susan to let me call them first.
Yeah.
Before she,
And I don't know if Larry sent this to everybody, like he made a really good point with Southbury, they were subcontracting out the mowing. in their liability didn't cover, the liability insurance didn't cover it, so we want to make sure in our contracts, we state, we will not subcontract that out.
I make sure that.
All right, so there's a motion by Kurt, supported by Rod for checkered lawn care. And then Rod, you're gonna check with him on. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye, opposed, say nay. Thank you. Oops. All right, so the next item is a discussion on how to proceed on the letter of intent, City of Chelsea Water Interconnection. And I will mention, when I talked to the attorney today, there's a couple other things he talked to me about that are on the agenda tonight. One of them is this, and the other couple, establishing a preservation board and a recreation commission. He has a lot of advice and input on those matters. And so he did say when we come to those, his recommendation would be, for us to hold off on creating anything, a citizen panel of preservation board, recreation committee, until he has had an opportunity to give us guidance on it. You know, certainly tonight, these are, we can discuss whether it's something the board wants to do, and then if we want to, then we can engage his services for that. So that kind of covers a couple different things in the agenda. I just wanted to say that. And outside of that, here's the.
And that's why you got our reading motions, it was just discussion. So that we can decide, you know, have, and I, different thoughts on how we want to proceed as a board. As we, you know, pursue this interconnection with Chelsea, which I think is a great idea, but I think in speaking to what Mike Williams was saying, you know, having some framework around what we want to do with the board is a really good idea.
Yeah.
That's what it's for, to begin that conversation.
I think if that's something that, you know, to kind of, as an aside, from the talks with Chelsea, that's a great idea. But I don't think that that's a good idea for a group of people to go in and negotiate with Chelsea. I mean, I think Kathy and Bob, that's their job, that's what they're supposed to do, and I think we should let them do that. You know, they can always talk with the group if there's gonna be.
Well, you know, a resident brought up in the last meeting that in the past, there were 2 board members present in those meetings, and then there would be a report given publicly after, and I think there's value in that. I think there's value in having 2 board members. You know, one to even just sit and listen, because sometimes you hear different things when you're not exactly
Right.
talking part.
Right. And we have had 3 meetings so far, and Amanda was at 2, with me. And then, and Bob Skull, so it was me, Amanda, Bob, me, Amanda, Bob, and then the last one we had, it was me, Bob Skull, and Carol was there. Chelsea had their zoning administrator person there, so it felt appropriate that she would be there for that. So I have no problem having another board member along. It was tricky with the 5-member board because it can only be 1 more of us, right? But it's always a team approach, right? It's never just, you know, 1 person out there. So, you know, Bob Skull would be obviously always involved. He's got to be there. And Carol, from time to time, they need to be there for her, you know, input, things like that. So, I'd be happy to, you know, facilitate conversations, and if we want to have 1 static person who's always there, or do we want to rotate it around? I'm sure everybody would like to, you know, be part of the conversation, or maybe just reporting back.
Once.
Yeah.
I'd like to go once, but I think you need to be there every time.
Yeah.
And then we can rotate amongst the rest of us that are interested. And staff. And professional staff.
Right. Right, they're the ones with, right,
Yes.
the knowledge.
Right.
And then, of course, I want to reiterate also that all of these things would be coming back to the board, and this is real preliminary. This is, we haven't spent any money, we're not gonna spend any money until we come back to the board and agree, yeah, it's something we wanna spend money on. You know, this whole thing could go nowhere, we could
Yeah.
decide, you know what, engineering is gonna cost too much, we don't think it's really gonna benefit us. And then it doesn't go anywhere. So I just, wanna say that we're not spending anything, and any money that would be spent would be approved by the board.
I think the idea, and again, I agree with all, I mean, these are complicated things, and I'm not asking you to form a committee today, but that's
Right.
something to think about. We talk about the fact that our residents, we have so much knowledge in our resident base. And we have, clearly from Mike speaking today, there's a history there. Before our time, there were people there that have a background in this, and they might be able to offer some insights into what we're looking at to round out where we're coming from, and I think that's incredibly valuable.
Yes, and the history is very valuable. Also, there's some people who have scars from their times as supervisor, as Mike Williams said, and sometimes that's difficult. Yeah, something like that, that I would, citizen committees are great, and we can talk with all about creating one. When I talked to him today, he didn't feel that this was like a citizen issue right now at this point. But let's have a conversation with him. I think he can give us guidance on it. It's always our decision. He doesn't ever tell us what to do, and he just gives us parameters or precedent and says, make your decision. So I think, it's something to discuss with him, and, all of us are working together, for the best things for the township, and nobody's gonna be out there negotiating on their own. But I agree, I think it's good, and we can come back and have reports, and they can be in the supervisor report or a separate report, and maybe it's not just a very written report, but it's a verbal report. It's, something that's a little more, engaging. Our reports, just, we put them in here, and I don't know if they ever get read or anything, so.
I just want to add one thing. The only reason this conversation is coming up at all is because there's a big change in leadership in the city of Chelsea. You have a new mayor and you have a new city, and what is he? City manager. The people who were in there before were not even remotely interested in talking to Sylvan Township. So I'm really glad for, and I hate to say this, younger people in office who are able to think broader and not just follow the same old path they have for the last 45 years. That's all I have to say.
Good. Moving on. Okay. Kurt, anything on that?
Well, I have so much, but
Go hold on to it. Okay, so next is Mr. Kosik's item, and I will reiterate again that this is one of the other things that Mr. Thal talked to me about, and he would, before he recommended, he was looking at our agenda, he recommended before we vote to make any solid financial moves that we talk to our bond counsel. He said, there's a reason why there are attorneys who specialize in bonds, and they make a lot of money to make sure that people stay out of trouble. And there's a lot of rules around the bonds and what monies you can use and when you can use them. And so he would prefer us to have a conversation with our bond counsel. Now, this is going back years and years. I believe it's John Axe. Mr. Thal's familiar with him. He's older. I don't think he really practices anymore, but I have engaged with some attorneys in his office when we were talking about the refunding. So his recommendation is, yes, discussion, this is a great item. If the board wants to move forward, he or I or someone should have a conversation with bond counsel. It might be really short, just to make sure that that what we want to do is legal.
I think our attorney should talk to them.
I'm sorry for your advice. I just wanted to get this out because it goes to Rod's next item too, in this late conversation with our attorney today, but
But I wanna talk about the two items that I have.
we'll get to those.
Okay.
Yeah, they're coming up.
Okay, so the bond council, I'd like to be involved in that.
Okay,
So when you do that, we also should have our meeting again with Washington County.
okay,
It's been
yeah,
past 6 months or so.
for biannual. Okay.
What I will say on this is that, you know, I was looking, what do we all agree? And we all agree that the system was initially designed to be paid for by tap fees and backed by the taxpayers as a last resort. That's how we went into this system. When the 4.4 mils was voted on, I'm sure had the voters been told that, you know, once these tap fees start coming in, the township can do whatever they want to have. They would not have passed. There's no way. Like Patrick said, it was like seven votes made a difference on it. So very clearly, the tap fees are supposed to be paid for that system. And that's where that money should go. I'm not sure how it gets there, through which fund. When it comes to the interest arbitrage that Mike was talking about, you know, I'm more, you know, get that money because it belongs towards that bond, get it there as quick as you can. And yeah, the township might be able to make 1% more on it somewhere, but I would rather not have that money at risk, that the township spends it on something else. And it doesn't go towards the bond. As Mike said, he didn't think we legally had to do it, but he said politically, it's the right thing to do. So even though you might be able to get 1% more, to me, it would be much more worth it to have that money go towards tap fees and not let it sit out there in some other fund to do things with. Because the sooner we get that money in there, the 4.4 mils goes. We're probably looking at 4 years of 4.4 mils. This 1 million would stop the advance problem. It would stop interest continuing to accrue there. That has to be paid for anyway in the end. $1 million would probably cover that pretty nicely. So it's the right thing to do, and that's why I put it in. We want to talk to bond, so I'm not sure I understand that. I mean, Washington County is responsible for the bond, not us, right? They're dealing with the bond, they're making payments to the bond, and we're just giving the county money to do that. But I'll go along with it and talk to John Ads and see and explain it.
I think that's a good idea. And, you know, we did have a bond counsel that advised us, so there was something that we needed advice on. And I want to point out, I think that the tap fees wouldn't just go into the general ledger where they would be at risk and spent on anything. To me, the water tap fees go to the water fund and the sewer tap fees go to the sewer fund. And the water has been, you know, we just passed a budget where our water fund was $250,000 in the red. But we actually have $250,000 or, you know, $500,000 in tap fees. So if we had said to the residents, you know, tap fees are gonna come in, they're gonna go back to supporting, maintaining the water system. Maybe they would have still said no, but I think there's a distinction to be made between going into township and just being spent on anything, and that those monies are specifically for water and specifically for sewer. In my mind, they're, you know, tap fees that came in from the maintenance of those systems. So I want to say that I don't think it's, you know, going to be spent on roads or anything. It's going to be spent on maintaining those systems.
I'd also like to add that Mr. Cooper's erroneous fund in the special sewer, the lake sewer, is not true. Because I was told numerous times the tap fees go into that special sewer account because someone was very afraid that there wouldn't be enough money left in there to pay off the lake sewer in the end. Which I felt was wrong, and I'd gone over it with the auditors 3 or 4 years until I quit. And it's finally coming to fruition now that we can't do that. And so I just wanted to make that statement was false. I didn't want any way that to go any further.
Right, so I think our priority should be to get the 4.4 mills paid off,
Mhm.
because that affects all the taxpayers
Right,
in Sylvan Township.
right.
If then there's maintenance that needs to be done, O&M, they can use future tap fees. Once that bond's paid off, they can then use those tap fees for that, but really the people on those systems should be covering their own costs.
Well, but when we had I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And if they can't,
Mhm.
if it's completely prohibited, then we should be going for 1 millage to cover the ongoing operating maintenance of that system. That would be the way to be transparent about it. You know, but you gotta pay off that bond first.
So we have been sitting on lawsuit funds over $2 million for years. And when I approached this and said, I want to pay off the advance, the idea was this, interesting. But we can make more money having it. So I'm not in disagreement that we need to pay down that money. And I think we have sources to do that. To me, the lawsuit money that was born out of these consent judgments that lock us into providing water and sewer, maybe some of those malpractice monies would be appropriate to use to pay down the advance. We've got money, so we have this cap, whereas before we were saying, no, we make more money on interest while we're sitting on pots of money. And now we're saying we have these cap fees, and now we have this burning desire to pay it down, which I applaud and support, but I just want to make sure that that we're doing it the right way, we're taking it from the right pot. If the attorney's saying we should, talk to the borough council, we'll talk to them, and maybe it'll be a quick conversation, and they'll say, it doesn't matter, you can do whatever you want. And then, we'll have a conversation. But there's multiple ways that we could, I think, alleviate that.
Well, I had spoken with Mike at one point about this, and this was something that resonated with me. He said, you can't look at this, that you need to pay off the bond. You have to ask yourself when you can stop collecting the fees. So if the money's invested, if we're paying less in interest for the advance and for the bonds, then what we would make if we have that money invested, that once you have enough money saved to pay off the bonds, you stop collecting and you use that money to pay the bonds.
You stop collecting what?
You stop collecting the millage. Because you
right,
have enough
right.
money at
Yes,
that point,
yes.
and so you are, that's why he said, you
Absolutely.
stop looking at it like paying the bond, paying it off.
Right.
You have to ask yourself when you can start collecting the money.
Well, and that's why we made the argument to pay off the advance. We're already on track to, there's 4 years left on the millage.
But he's
There's
not
4
saying,
years,
he's not
so-
saying pay off the advance, and that's where
Right,
he's saying, don't pay a bill before it's due.
right,
In the sense, if you're making more in your investments, because
Right.
right now we are, if it's invested, we will, then make as much money as you can,
right.
have that sitting there, and then when you know you have enough to pay off the rest of the bonds,
Mhm.
then you can stop collecting
Right.
millage.
Well, and we'll stop collecting the millage when we don't have, we can't collect, the millage is being raised to pay off the bond. Once the bond's paid off, then we don't collect the millage anymore. So I understand what you're saying, but it's also that's kind of what it is, and we have 4 years left on the millage. It was a 2012 millage for 20 years, right? So 2032 is the end of the millage.
But we might not.
We're gonna be way under that. That's what I'm saying, is 2026, we're gonna be done. 2027, we're gonna be done raising the 4.4 mils. We have, not us, but everyone who has sat at this table for the past, 15 years has worked towards shortening that time on the millage. So we're shortening it. If we can pay off the advance, we shorten it even a little bit more. And I'm in favor of that. I'm just saying, do we have to use tap fee money, or can we use other monies? And I don't know for sure. We can discuss that. It sounds like you're in favor of investing the money. Kurt's saying, let's use it for the tap. So we have discussions, and I think the first
Well,
step
no, I
is to
think they're
say,
using tap fees towards the bond, but there's a different mechanism if you invest it. So that you're making more than the interest you're paying on the advance and
Right.
the actual bond.
right,
And then, so you're, like he's saying, you know, you're
Right.
$100.
no, I get it, I understand the argument, that's what's been said, but I don't understand how that's not different than, I mean, to me, that's
No, it's
different than what's Kurt saying.
No, I would still say that those tap fees though would still go towards that. It's not being used for other things.
If you put the tap fees towards the bond,
Uh-huh.
it benefits all the taxpayers.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
take the tap fees and put them in the water and the sewer fund, it only benefits the people that are on the water and the sewer system.
Mhm.
That's the difference.
Right. And I
And to
think
me, that's a big
that's, it, well, to me it is too, but it's, you know, what legally can we do? We all wanna alleviate this for all the residents, but if the tap fees are for the water system, can we use it to pay down debt? That's a legal
We need
question.
to find somebody who
legal
knows
question.
more than we do.
So I will engage the attorney, I'll say the board is interested in pursuing this. And I will pass this on, I will keep the board informed, absolutely.
So I'll move to table.
All right. I'll support that. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of tabling, say aye. Aye, opposed, say nay. Rod made a motion and I supported. Okay, and then we're gonna come into the same thing on the next.
And even though mine was geared toward the advance, to pay off the advance. Once again, I will move to table this pending Rob's input.
Okay, so I was just confused on the wording by this. I'm not sure I really understand it. Sure. Move the 1.2 million from the special sewer account? What is the special sewer?
Did you read the email that was attached to it?
Yeah, from Kimberly.
Yeah. So there was funds from the urban bond that were put in,
Okay, so this is not the check you got for cat.
no, it was not.
Okay. So this is
different money totally.
it's coming from the state of Michigan.
No, it's coming from the taxes. When the urban bond was paid out of the loan fund.
Oh. The 4.4 million.
Yes. And so these funds were
So this,
taken from that account and put into the special sewer account. So
so this is just a housekeeping thing.
it will be a housekeeping.
If you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm allowed to speak or not.
No, go ahead.
Absolutely. So last year during tax season, there were the way the process worked. We receive a check, we receive checks for taxes. We have to do a distribution out to all the agencies. Our urban bond is paid out of tax. It goes into our special sewer, which is Fund 592, which is only a holding account for our urban bond. And then we write another check out of that out to the county to pay the county the urban bond. What happened last year was that money was deposited in general instead of special sewer. It happened a couple of times, so I had to create what we call a due from to hold the money. And that money hadn't been transferred yet, so to clear the books up in preparation of the audit this year, because our fiscal year ended, I asked Brad to please move the money back where it belonged.
So why can't we vote on this?
Rob also wanted to
Wait,
check on this, yes. Just to make sure that everything was kosher. And I didn't see a problem with it. I mean, who might say no?
Well, yeah, maybe I misunderstood that a little bit too, but I'll throw it out to him, because if it's an easy one and it can wait, is it okay if it waits?
Like I said, post audit from last year, there was a due from on there specifically stated it was due to our special sewer, well, it was called due to urban bond, right on our balance sheet. All I did was the exact amount of that request that Rod transfer into the account it belonged to. That was it.
Okay, so then that's even different than, so that's just.
It's supported from last year's
It's just
audit,
that,
there was no
yeah.
additional transactions in that account.
I'm kind of feeling like maybe, yeah, I wonder, I mean, when I saw this and I thought this pay down bond. That I thought
Yes, I
that this was, well, and I think maybe it just threw me off and I maybe misrepresented it to Paul, because if this is all it is. And you're just,
Pay off
Just
the
like-
advance. That's all it is, that this is for. The advance from the county that they continue to give us.
Yeah, but it's not the advance, it's
It's
the
not,
actual.
I think
it's
we're,
the actual-
I think where the confusion is coming is last year. The checks that were written out of special steward to the county to cover the urban bond that we had received, those checks still came out of special steward. It's just the money never made it in the bank account, because we accidentally deposited in the general fund. All this was just moving it into the account that actually belonged in. There was no transaction that wasn't previously reported for it.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't even saying.
So this is a payment we have to make.
I mean, that's-
There's no
it's just
associated with it. It's just transferring
transferring
money.
money.
Right, we already
Right.
did that.
Right,
Yeah, all the urban bond payments went out last year.
yeah, that all got paid, this is just
Yeah.
making that account whole again, because, I mean, thank goodness that money was needed, because that, anyway.
Yeah, it was just, it was sitting in the wrong bank account.
Right. I'm okay with it too, I just, unless you want it, yeah. You still want to table that, I mean, if there's no question about paying extra down on the bond or something, I think that's where I'm misunderstood and maybe misrepresented it to all, but if it's just moving to accounts.
And if it helps, like I said, we got through the audit last year, all
Right,
of the tax money that was supposed to go urban bond to the county received this year. Again, thanks to the collaborative effort of the treasurer, we were able to send the tax settlement report off, and from my understanding, when I'm told, we had absolutely no adjustments. It was a perfect tax settlement. Almost was paid the first time, nothing
nice,
came back the second time. So
okay,
all money's been sent to the county, all money's been received the way it should have been, so.
okay. I'm okay with that then. Do we vote on this, or is this just maybe more of a informational thing? I don't know that we normally vote when you're.
Again, it's informational, it wasn't,
Taxing kind of
yeah.
things, okay. So,
I guess not. I guess I'm a little bit.
well, do you
I guess
want
I'd
to,
like to, if I could set in with Rob
okay,
about this.
sure.
Okay,
Do you want,
We don't need a motion.
well, let's just table it for now.
Okay.
if he wants to table it, and so you made that motion and I supported. And then we'll just go with that, and if it's just a matter of housekeeping, then that's what I can do, okay. All right, all in favor of tabling this, say aye. Aye, opposed, say nay, thank you. Okay, establishing farmland and open space preservation board.
So, I'm here to ask you all to consider are establishing either a board or a commission to, to follow along with what Barry Long talked to us about. Any number of townships in Washtenaw County have this, and I've been following Dexter Township, and it's taken them like 2 years to get to this. The first thing that you do is establish a board or a commission who studies what everybody else is doing. And then you look at what they're doing and adapt it to your own township. I've heard any number of people, any number of times, say they want to preserve open space or farmland. This is one way of doing it. So what I'm asking you all is, if you're interested, then we're going to ask our attorney to educate us on the difference between whether we need a commission or board. So do I need to make this like a resolution?
I don't think we need a resolution. We might want to vote on
Yes.
the board, on the board's intent, like if we support this idea, we could.
Let's do that.
Vote on,
So if that's your motion, I'll second it.
Yes.
all right. So motion by Sandy, supported by Amanda to pursue farmland and open space preservation board committee, something.
Right.
That will be the motion. What was your motion again, Sandy?
To, should Sylvan Township establish a farmland open space preservation board / commission to learn how other communities in Michigan have created ordinances and make recommendations to the board of trustees on how Sylvan could do the same. It's
You got it.
written down, it's written.
Okay, perfect, there you go. All right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sandy, and you support that motion, so, right, okay. Any other discussion?
Yes, my only question would be, how do you fund it?
Well, that, so Dexter first did
Village, the video village.
yeah, well. But. We're not in a position right now, I think, to ask people for money for this. It's gonna take a board or a commission 2 years. To get us to where we're gonna put together. Something where we're gonna ask people to be taxed for it. And in Dexter, it's 0.5 mils. So it's not a lot of money. But first we need to find out. What everybody else is doing, and do we want to do this, and then roll it over into asking people. To fund it. Because once you have money, then you can go out and get matching funds. To be able to purchase open space or farmland or other open space. But we have to do something first. We can't just sit here talking to each other about it.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so the motion in front of you from Sandy, supported by Amanda, all in favor say aye. Aye. Both say nay.
Okay, what did about it? Guess I can say yes.
So 5, 0 nays, motion carries. The next one, the recreation.
Yes. So interestingly, I've only heard one person talk about recreation commission. And so I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was here for a public hearing because my neighbor was doing something with his property that required a public hearing. And I was sitting over there, and at the end of my row was a fellow who had all these plans, you know, it's pathway plans, but I didn't know who he was. So he stood up to speak. He was from Linden Township. He was showing us the plans of the border to border trail through our township, and Linden was paying for it because he knew we didn't have any money. I was so embarrassed. So the trail goes through our township. We have paid nothing for it. And since our other neighbor, the city of Chelsea, has just been recognized as the state's latest pure Michigan trail town, which involves trails. So we have trails here and trails there, and somehow we're just not involved in this at all. I know somebody who lives on Pierce Road who says, oh my gosh, every weekend, people with fat tire and mountain bikes are running up and down their road going into the Waterloo recreation area. I mean, it's a big deal, and we're not involved in it at all. Certainly there's other things besides trails. And that's why you put a group of people together and they talk about what is it that you would like to do. And as Scott said, it's another thing where we need to tax ourselves for it. You don't even have to have a lot of money, because there's a lot of players out there who really want the trail system to be as good as it can. And I would like to see us participate along with our neighbors. So, should Sylvan Township establish a recreation commission in order to participate in the creation of recreation opportunities in the township? A commission or board is necessary in order to apply for grants through various entities. That's my motion.
Oh, that's your motion, perfect. All right. Well, and I think it is along those lines as well. It's right. So we're just sort of like, are we interested? Are we gonna take it to Rock Hall? I will say, when I talked to Rod today, he said that some communities have a recreation plan. Then that is sufficient for you to apply for grants.
Yeah,
But let's do it. I mean, I'm in favor of it. I would support that, and we can talk to Paul. He could help us, guide us. If it's something we don't need, and he says it's, let's have to discuss it.
the whole thing about you have to have a plan, and that's what your recreation commission / board will do. When you have a plan, then you can, and money, you can go shopping.
Just to clarify, Pat, the motion that is actually the explanation. We would like that to be the motion.
I'm sorry,
The motion that you're offering is what we have under the explanation.
yes.
Should
So,
so
okay. Put / board or commission. Our attorney will let us know which one it is.
Okay, so that is your motion, Sandy. I'll support that. And I already did some discussion, but. And like I said, maybe he'll say, oh, you can get grants and there's other ways you can do it, but who knows? I think you're right. We need to be involved in.
Oh, you have to
the
be
things.
organized, you have to have
Yes.
a plan, you can't just walk up and knock on the door and say, "Please."
All right, any other discussion? Motion by Sandy, supported by Kathy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Next, add policies and procedures, Michigan class to financial investment policy.
I'm going to revisit this again. Bring it back to add Michigan class to our approved financial institutions. From what, a couple of years ago?
Mhm.
So I'd like to make a motion to add Michigan class to our approved financial facilities.
Support.
Where is Michigan class?
It's in Michigan. I didn't bring all the materials back because I gave them out before, and we talked 3 different meetings about it before I said, I'm done.
Oh, okay, so I mean, it's not a bank in town.
It's not a bank, oh, nope, not at all.
It's set up specifically for municipalities.
Yep.
And and the thing about it is you're making interest, but your money is still liquid. And Kimberly has had some experience with them, so that's the nice thing. It's like having your money invested, but it's not tied up in a 1-year CD. You need it in 6 months, and then you're like, oh, we don't have it. If you put it in the class pool, it's there. If you need it in 6 months, you can get it in 6 months. And one of the things that when I went on their website, one of their board members, maybe board president, I have to look, is Catherine McClary, who is Washington County's own treasurer. And I felt really good seeing that, because I personally have a pretty high opinion of her. I think she does a good job, and when I saw her there, I thought, okay, that makes me feel a little better about it. And then again, talking to Kimberly, and if anybody has questions for her, she has experience with them, but also said this would be a solid move for us.
So one other question here, so I'm assuming that each of these banks, we look at 250,000 max.
Well, any bank is,
To cover the insurance or
any bank.
FDIC covered. So with this policy, we have 8 banks that covers $2 million, 250. And we got $5 million or more. We talked tonight, so we need another 12 to find another 12 banks. In order to make
Is it per account or is it, oh, go ahead.
It's per account per institution, $250,000 is all you're insured for. If I may make the recommendation, I do work with a couple other government agencies, townships, watershed boards. In my experience, what I've seen and what works is they figure out the amount of money that needs to be available, your discretionary funds, we'll say, for lack of a better term. Whether it be 250 or 500,000, that's what you keep in your bank accounts. The rest of the money they have started putting into the My Class. The My Class is a group of municipal funds, or municipal communities that they all pool their funds together, and it's all invested, and it's investments that comply with statutory regulations. So you guys are not outside of that.
Yeah.
It pays interest quarterly. And you can do a same day wire transfer between that account and your bank account. So if you do end up in a situation where you're like, oh, we need to pull $1 million right away, you can transfer it same day right into your bank account.
So when we say Michigan class, you can go higher than 250,000, put $1 million.
It's investment, so it's not backed by FDIC or FDIC. It's still at risk because of investment. But, and I don't have a lot of historical data, in the people that I've worked with who have used it, they've never lost a dime on it. They've actually only gained money. It's usually typically at the interest rate, so they are based on the federal rate. or
And by
the
law, you
federal-
can't lose money.
Right, by law you can't, so that's what I'm saying. But it's not subject to FDIC like bank was, so like if your bank was to close, go belly up. And you had $500,000 and then your loan was $250. Your $250 will be backed by the federal government, you'll have access to it within a few days. The other $250 you lose. Putting the money in the investment account that sits there, earns interest, it's not subject to credit risk like the banks are.
And those investments are, because I know there are. Like
I
you
have
said,
not-
statutory things, so I'm glad to hear that it complies with.
Yeah,
all
I
of
have
those
not
things. You
seen the
can't be
actual-
risky.
Individual investments that they're in,
Mhm.
cause like I said, I'm on the recording end of it, so as
Right.
the interest comes in, I'm making sure it's getting. I wasn't part of the initial setup as far as putting it into. We just worked through the application process for one of the other agencies I work for. We were not given an option of investments we can choose, so again, it's a pooled cash fund. So I don't think you have as much control over the exact investment it goes into. You're just given, this is your interest rate this year that you're gonna earn, 4.8% right now. In prior years, it was really low because the federal rate was really low, so you didn't earn a lot on it. But now it is generating a lot more than CDs are. I mean, you can still get a good CD for 3.7, 4.2, depending on what bank you go to,
You have a CD right now, 1.87.
4.87, yeah. But I do believe the money back is making the same amount.
But it's not insured, then you're subject to interest rate risk, so it's more like, so there's no insurance on it.
Yeah, there's no, ins-
Use the fund,
correct, exactly.
so it's not insured.
It's not insured,
Right, it's not insured.
but it's not at risk of the bank collapsing and losing the funds either. Does that make sense? The investment would have to go belly up, whatever it's invested in, and from my understanding, they're invested in interest-bearing investments, so the risk is low. I'm just making a recommendation because it'd be easier than trying to find 12 banks. And to mention, if you have 12 banks, I currently have a balance sheet that recently was not here, somewhere else. That went from 20 bank accounts down to 3 bank accounts. The time that it took to reconcile all of those bank accounts. And again, this is elected officials, so the likelihood that the next elected official is gonna come in with the knowledge on how to do that is low. And so you have people like me who are here to be able to make sure that what needs to get done in the background is getting done. But we're typically either hourly based or contract based. It's gonna cost the township more money if you go out to 20 banks versus coming down to 2. Just, you know. But again, it's a board decision, so. But the MyFest, like I said, everything I've seen from it, it looks like it's a safer way of going rather than putting all of your money into 20 different banks or keeping it in the 2 bank accounts, 3 bank accounts that you currently have. Because it is at risk.
It's probably not a whole lot of interest in, I mean, if it's a, well, I guess it
The
depends
bank
on where
account
it is.
interest?
Yeah, no.
It's like a couple hundred a year, and it's very low. I don't have exact numbers, first quarterly payment for one of the agencies that I work with was $18,000 for their first quarterly estimate. Or interest, and they received that quarterly, so, they just reinvested it and it continues to grow. So that would always be a recommendation, but if you don't need the funds and they're making money for you, in my opinion, I'm like, why would you do that?
All right. We have a motion by Rod, supported by Sandy. My notes. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to add Michigan class to policy finance 30, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you, motion carries. Rod made the motion, you will support by Steve. We moved the conditional rezoning request up, so the last item on our agenda is the cost of living increase for employees. I went through and pulled up old rates and just calculated 6.5%, and these are new rates. If the board would like to approve these, then we will get information to payroll for the April payroll at the new rates.
Make the motion to approve the new pay rates for the employees. For the one.
Second.
Motion by Rod, supported by Sam. Any discussion?
One question, in the expenses, you got, is this agenda item require expense funds? Yes. If yes, or budgeted, we're uncertain about that?
No, we're not uncertain about that, but yes, they are budgeted. Thank you. That must have been a remnant from the old form. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. All right, I think that's the business of our agenda tonight. We are at our last public comment portion for our meeting tonight. Any public comments? All right. Oh, yes.
First thing about the issue with the minutes of the last planning commission meeting for the conditional rezoning. I understand that they will approve minutes at their regular meeting this month, probably, as they usually do. But I think I heard that Saul's issue with the minutes wasn't so much whether they're approved or not, but it's whether the minutes were complete or in good form, which would indicate that the minutes have to be revised before approval. Otherwise, they're still in the same state that they are right now. Now, how does that happen? I think we need to communicate to the planning commission what Saul's concerns are, so that they're able to rectify it. Second thing is, it occurred to me as we're seeking higher interest, which I think is a great idea, by the way. Although I also think it's a great idea to look at the risk profile of what we're doing. So those were good comments. Being in an interest-bearing investment doesn't mean that there's no risk. Especially if we have a situation like a lot of people are afraid of right now, where banks start failing. I mean, some have, but not too many so far, luckily. Then other things start happening too, and other investments start to go bad at the same time. So it's really hard to judge. I don't know what to do. I know spreading the money around has a lot more administrative overhead to it too. So it's got to be a balance of these things. Maybe not quite 15 accounts or whatever, but maybe a few would be better. It's a judgment call. But things can change rapidly in the financial environment, and things that you think are safe might not be. It occurred to me though that I think Mike Williams said that the amount of interest we could earn if we invested all of our money is something like $200,000 a year. Isn't that just about how much we're transferring to the water fund every year? It's like when I say that, I know my reasoning is also flawed because the inflation rate is running higher than that. So the value of our money is also shrinking at the same time. But it is, if we could hold all of our other costs flat and not accounting for inflation, then the interest alone could go to the water sewer fund. Just something to think about. Mike Williams also mentioned something about if you take money out of the CD, you have to pay a penalty, and I know that's true, but not sure exactly how much the penalty is. That have to look at it.
I'm actually looking at that right now at Chelsea State Bank.
So those are just my thoughts about that. And thank you again. Yeah, thank you for having a meeting really devoted to moving things forward on many fronts, and they're all different kinds of things, of course, on the agenda, but and also for being cautious enough not to feel required to take action immediately on things and everything. Actually, wasn't much action taken, but at least it's good to see things going forward and really being examined and discussed out. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just mention real quick, and I don't want to get in the habit, but in talking with Paul, I'm going to give a plan, and either he or I are going to reach out to the planning commission and make sure that they understand, you know, the problem with the draft minutes was there were blanks, and those need to be filled in. You can't have approved minutes with blanks in them. So if someone, you know, when they look at it, maybe we can send it, they can say, oh, I remember what I was saying was this, and then they can plug the word in. And then if we can't come up with the word, then the sentence has got to go, right? You can't have a sentence with blanks in it. So I think, and as long as it's not the motion, which is the important part of the minutes. So thank you for bringing it up. And I just want to mention that we did discuss that and there is a path forward for Amanda. Okay, next public comment, Vicky.
I'm not gonna go to the mic. I just caution you on playing with an investment money. There is no insurance unless it's something that I'm not aware of. I just look into what she's talking about, because the insurance they get at the banks is guaranteed your money. I had 20 years as a financial planner, so I do seminars, and if it's pooled short-term and long-term money and it's treasury securities, it depends what that pool of money is invested in. There's an interest rate risk, even if they're locking in for 3 months, 6 months, 10 months, and the pool of money. If interest rates go up or down, that money is not available at that rate, because it's insured, so it actually worth less than the money that's in a market that interest rates are high right now. It should be okay, but if interest rate, there's just a lot of interest rate risk, even on safe investments, there's a lot of risk. And pool money that's not guaranteed, and I think you need to look at it, you have to be in guaranteed money. I don't know that you play in, it's more mutual fund type of investment. So like, are you allowed to invest in mutual funds? I don't know. What you can invest, but there is no guarantee.
Yes, we're not, we cannot do any risks.
Well, there's risk in everything.
Well,
Because even if
you know what I
you
mean.
win it right now, it's 3% and interest rate is 7%, you're losing money in 15% interest rate risk, or there's inflation. So no matter what you invest in, there is risk.
Right.
There is no risk to any investment. So, I would be leery of a pool invest. I would want to know what they're investing in and maturities and like the same past history of what it is.
I've already
I doubt that there's any insurance.
I've already reached out to our,
Yeah, there's no insurance.
I've already reached out to our. Yes.
Would you state your name one more time, please?
Oh, Vicky Murdoch.
Vicky Murdoch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's give someone else a public comment. Any comments?
I think if I understand this correctly, if you're talking about money that's been raised from taxpayers for the purpose of repaying debt, that idea to be gambling with it, no matter how good that investment was. Because if the market, if everything goes south, then your investments crash, you're not gonna be able to get the taxpayers to bail it out again. Because you were gambling with money. I don't know if they're supposed to work, saying that you pay down debt, it's guaranteed to pay down debt. That money isn't subject to being lawsuits, something else, that money, pay down debt, goes to pay down debt.
Right.
So they don't have future risk.
Right.
That would be all.
Because yeah. All right, other public comment? All right, Board of Trustee comments?
Yes.
Yes.
I have something from the planning commission. So, we don't have a contract yet from Beckett and Rader. Because we just met on Thursday and their contract making person is out of the office, but we'll have one soon. I am asking the board to approve some funding for ads, like in the Sun Times. And what's the online one I can?
The Chelsea-
Yeah. I have no idea how much money that might be. Let's see. She said that, so her name is Elizabeth, and she said if we had a social media account, that they could put the survey on there. So she's gonna be using Survey Monkey and, she hopes to be able to, I don't know how she's gonna do this, but to send like flyers home from school with kids. And we're gonna try to get people every way we can. So the only thing that might be cost much money is ads.
And this is for the survey for gathering information for the
Yes,
master plan.
absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Yep. No, and I know, the board budgeted money. I'm not sure what we budgeted is going to be enough with this new group. But I think the board speaking for myself as always, the more input, the better, right? The
Oh, yeah.
more people we have coming forward, so I think to me, that's a good use of funds to advertise that.
So that I can say yes.
Well, how does the board feel about could we use some of the budgeted money that we budgeted for ordinance for that endeavor? We budgeted $10,000, I believe, for master plan review. I don't think we have a contract yet necessarily from them.
So just to make sure they do that.
I don't know, yeah. But that's good information. We're glad that that's moving forward. Yeah.
What they're gonna do, that's gonna come out of their money, not ours.
Okay,
So, their reaching out comes out of their,
It's part of what they're charged.
it's
I
part of,
thought I was charged with asking the board for money for advertising. Misunderstood, never mind.
I have a couple of things real quick. I want to let the board know that the Dark Skies and the public, the Dark Skies group who came into the presentation said that they're willing to help us if the board is interested in moving forward on the Dark Skies. I told them I thought that the board was interested in that. We heard from people who loved the presentation. So the next step would be, I think they might come before planning commission, but they also said they have an expert at U of M in Dark Skies who would assign an intern to look at our ordinances and make recommendations. Yes. So I told her we would be interested in that. I think they're gonna come forward, to the planning commission and coordinate that, with Carol. So I just wanted to mention that's still moving forward. And finally, one ugly thing I have to talk about is the Leone Regional Utilities Authority. And specifically Jack Knowles of Chelsea Square has reached out to me and wants to know what is going on. We've been in communication with them and it's Leone Township, the Leone Regional Utilities Chair is John Lisinski, who is the Grass Lake Township Supervisor. And he called me a while ago, about 10 days ago, and said, hey, I have good news. It sounds like Leone is going to be negotiating this consent order, so the moratorium on the sewer will be lifted. He said Leone Township hired a township manager. It's a gentleman, I think his name was Mike Jesper. He's been in Blackman Public Safety for like 27 years. He knows the community. And told he's a get it done kind of person. So they have hired him and he has made great strides in negotiating this. So I said, wow, all we needed all along was a township manager in Leone. So, so in the meantime, Jack Knowles reached out to me, he's very unhappy, I told him this news and he said, basically, so what? And he kind of like, and I understand it, he said, that's good, but also, we spoke in January, Eagle told us they were gonna escalate the matter to the Attorney General. If we only had negotiated, he wants to know if that's happened, he wants to know if we have any, intent to put pressure on Leone. And so, and I can tell him the last time we met about this, we decided we would meet with elected officials. We've done that. He's tired of waiting. I don't know what to say other than that right now. I think we all decided when we met with the attorney, the path we would take would be with elected officials. And I wrote to John Lisinski, told him I was getting pressure. I wrote to Micah Cotton. John said he doesn't have an update. Micah Cotton called me. She works for Eagle. She said, I would really love to tell you that by the end of this month, we're going to have a resolution to this. She can't say for sure. She feels positive. She feels there's progress. So that's all good news, but also looking at it through Jack Knowles' eyes and Sean Lapeer of Westchester, they're still in the same spot they were months ago. So I told Jack I would mention it to the board, this is just a comment time. So let's mull it over and we'll keep an eye on the next couple weeks, but perhaps it's time to reconvene and see with Brett Paul and see if there's any sort of next steps we need to take.
So when were they telling us that things would be go? Was it April?
Yes.
Yes, and so for those people, for the manufactured homes and for Danny Berry property, they had those conditional rezonings, so they've been allowed to go. So the two developments we have still waiting on, they don't have any approved permit at all. It's in limbo, it's out there just sitting around, it's not approved, it's not denied, it's just sitting there. So they're becoming very impatient.
You misspoke accidentally. You said they have conditional rezonings. And they have.
That's right. Permits.
Yeah.
Everything feels like if it's conditional, it must be a rezoning. You're right. They had conditional permits, Part 41 permits.
I wonder why they got it and not everybody.
I think it was timing.
Yes.
They put theirs in first, and so they said, well, you need to get permission from Leone first, and then everything really blew up, and then these other entities came forward and put in for their permits, and they were told there's a moratorium on sewer connections to Leone until they can agree to the consent order. So just want to let the board know that we can think about it, talk about it, and let's just all hope for a resolution on this quickly.
Yeah, so I really said that if Leone is in breach of contract, then we should be suing. Saying you are not following. And they've always said April, plant's gonna be up and running and all the, it'll be done in April. Well, if it drags out much past April, I think we're back at filing a lawsuit. Because then at least we can show our developers that we're doing what we both can.
Right.
Right. And so I know the plan is done, the plan is ready. That's why Danny Berry and those guys were allowed to start flow. So the April thing, that box is checked. So the only box that's hanging out for the developers is that Leone needs to agree to this consent order that Eagle's holding them to. And then when we discussed it before, and when the attorney said, oh, court takes a really long time. It'll be a year before we're even in front of a judge. And at that time, we were hopeful, like, well, in a year, this will be resolved. Well, that was, 5 months ago. So I think, that was the thought at the time. And I think, if we talk about it with Paul too, he will say also that, the developers are also welcome to, we are not the problem. We are not the holdup. It's Eagle and it's Leone, so the developers are also welcome to reach out to those entities, also. But I hear what you're saying, we do have a contract, and I do think they're observing that now. They recognized it when we talked with the attorney there, Rob Fall and I, and Howard Linneberry, who's the Leone supervisor, and their attorney. We had a phone conversation and they acknowledged the contract. And I remember Rob Fall afterwards telling me that's a win, because they didn't say, we're not gonna, that's not a, valid contract. They said, okay, we see we have a contract, so maybe that would behoove us, if we wanted to threaten a lawsuit.
Only have one comment, if we're moving into the May 2nd election, I have issued 542 ballots and have received 34. 34 absentee ballots back.
Oh.
So they'll start coming.
Yes. And then we moved the May meeting because of the election, so the next meeting will be, May 9th. And then the election is the 2nd.
I just want to expand on what Kim said. It was Kim and Kathy, our assessor, and myself that resulted in a perfect settlement this year. All zeros all the way down the sheet. And we were first to settle.
That's excellent. That's good news.
That was.
That's good news. The auditors will be happy. You guys are happy. I know it was a long day, but worth it to have that peace of mind. So, yay, teamwork.
It was.
Would you like to?
Move to adjourn.
Exactly. With 10:02 or you got? 10:02. All right, motion by Sandy, supported by Kurt. All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, say nay. Thank you all. Wow.